skies. I don't think it's going to stay this way because the forecast is to cool down and cloud and possibly a little bit of rain blowing in.
Well, that's always very much the situation at the start of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Nobody knows exactly what the weather conditions are going to be like. These pictures are the live pictures on the return from Bastogne, and as always, nearly always, every year in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, there's what we call the early morning breakaway. This is the route, fairly typical, moving away from Liège, 260 kilometres, a couple of small climbs on the way down towards Bastogne, but it really does get tough on the way back up. Vies-Alme, and then that 4, 5 and 6 repetition of climbs there are the very difficult climbs of Haut-Levé, Le Rosier, and then on to climb number 9, the Côte de la Redoute. An extra climb put back in this year, the climb of the Haut-Levé, which is going to make it very difficult in that middle section of the return up to Liège.
So 2 climbs on the way south, a nice gentle warm-up to this beautiful part of Belgium, and then there are 10 climbs on the way back. And the Côte de la Redoute is an absolute brute, but there are more than 70 riders getting up there to the base of that climb last year, and that could be the reason why the organisers have made the route this year one of the hardest in recent times. The finish at Anse itself is up a hill as we now look down on the riders. As I say, about 100 kilometres to go. We're waiting for final confirmation on that. I'll quickly give you the names. The breakaway started at 30 kilometres today. Stefan Wessermann of Germany getting clear, and the Discovery Channel team rider from Spain, Benjamin Noval. They were quickly joined by Koen de Kurt of the Liberty team, Johan Verstrepen of Landbouw Credit, Walter Benito of the Boyga team from France. Maximum lead of 8 minutes 20. Last check we got, it was down to 5 minutes 10. Bob.
5 minutes 10 seconds lead. Benjamin Noval having a good day for the Discovery Channel team. We saw him do a fantastic Tour de France last summer in support of Lance Armstrong's 6th win and record-breaking win in the Tour de France. Benjamin Noval, a very strong bike racer. Been rather quiet so far this spring, but it's great to see him out on a breakaway with none other than Stefan Wessermann of the T-Mobile squad. Both Discovery and T-Mobile looking for some serious results in this year's edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Very tough bike race, lots of hills, the oldest classic, and an absolutely gorgeous race. And so far we've had great conditions.
These are the 5 leaders, and they're now just starting the early slopes here of the Côte d'Ouane, and I think they'll begin to realise that behind the main field will start to whip up the pacemaking. They had a maximum advantage of 8 minutes and 20 seconds, but very shortly that's going to start to tumble, because again this is what we call the early morning breakaway. They've been at the front of the race now for around about close on 200 kilometres.
And the time here in France now is just 10 minutes after 3 in the afternoon. They've been out since mid-morning. Big send-off in Liège for the 91st time. 195 riders rolling out, in fact, a big peloton. And really none of these riders, with the exception of Stefan Wessermann, we will put in the category because they have had good results, but not of the quality of Stefan, former winner of one-day classic races. And looking pretty strong right now, and that's why we feel he has a plan, or at least his team has got a big plan today.
This is the Côte d'Ouane. The roads are getting slightly smaller now on the way back from Bastogne, which is always regarded as the turning point of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. They come along some pretty large main roads, but once they get into the strategic points with these climbs of the Côte d'Ouane, the Côte de Stocker, the roads are a lot smaller, and in fact the descents off these little climbs here are rather precarious.
Finney once had a very serious crash in this race. Thankfully he recovered to go on to win stages of the Tour de France, but it was a very ugly crash at the time. It's a pretty routine one attack, 5 riders coming together at around about 673 kilometres. It's come down now. We've had no check since that 4 minutes 55 about 10 minutes ago, but I'd be very surprised it didn't continue to now collapse.
I think it will start to tumble very rapidly. Stefan Wessermann out on a suicide mission, really. The man on the front there is Verstrepen from the Landbouw Credit team. They will very shortly see the time gap starting to come down, because with this repetitive nature of these very narrow roads, I think the main field, Bob, would really have to go fairly fast, because the big names would want to stay at the front end of the race. 13% is the steepest part of this climb, with an average gradient of 7.7, and it's just over 2 kilometres in length. There is a big strong man, Stefan Wessermann, a winner in the past of a race called the Peace Race, probably one of the top amateur races in the world in its time in the former Eastern Bloc countries, and this year for the first time since the war not actually happening.
Also a winner of the Tour of Flanders last year. Tried to duplicate that success earlier in the spring. He was unable to do that. he missed out on the big breakaway in Paris-Roubaix. That's his favorite race of the year. Stefan Wesemann sitting there a little bit too far back in the field, and that's what drives the peloton in the finale of these bike races. Everybody's so desperate to get to the front that the pace in the group, it just goes up and up and up with each little difficulty out on the race course. Wesemann missing out on the break that was led by the Fassa Bortolo riders, Juan Antonio Flecha, as well as George Hincapie, of course, of the Discovery team, and of course Tom Boonen. Tom Boonen's teammate Pipo Pozzato putting the hammer down, caught Wesemann unawares a little bit too far down the group, and he never made it back to the front, even though he chased for the final 50 kilometers of the bike race. He was very strong there, but he didn't quite make it. And there's the peloton, and look, right in the middle there is Alexander Vinokourov, one of the other stars in the T-Mobile squad that they're hoping can do something today. Just behind him, Oscar Freire, who had a very good Flèche Wallonne.
It may be the presence of Vinokourov here because he was my guess to really give it a good go today. If he gets half a chance, he is the best ever finisher from his nation in Kazakhstan in this event. He finished third in it last year, so he knows what's in front of him, and that might be the reason why Wesemann is doing the work up front just now.
Arrière du peloton, the back end of the main field, and looks like somebody's got a problem over to the right-hand side there.
I think, in fact, it was Petito there standing on the roadside, Roberto Petito. Not a good place to puncture. Why wait till the hill? He should have flatted on the bottom, shouldn't he? Really?
A bit of bad luck there. You can see the leading group of 5 starting to split. This young man here from Liberty Seguros, he's going out of the back. It also seems as if De Kort is also having a bit of a... This is De Kort. It also seems as if Verstappen is having a bit of a problem too.
Young professionals are now finding the pressure just a little bit too much under the impetus perhaps of Walter Benetton. No, on the contrary, he's also going out of the back. Well, so far on the climbs, we haven't had many, but every time over the top has been Wesemann building points in the competition over the little climbs. Remember, there's 12 of them during the day. And now it looks as though that they've gone back to the original 2 men that started the move here at 30 kilometres, Benjamin Novell and Wesemann.
Not surprising to see Novell, the strongest rider here. He's a tough man. We've seen him work very hard for Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France last year. Now today, giving himself a certain amount of freedom, because Discovery Channel, Bob, I think, having a very difficult time fielding on 2 fronts at the moment. They've got a team in the United States riding the Dodge Tour of Georgia. And here, really, when you look down through the list of riders who are participating for Discovery Channel, it's difficult to find a leader. Stein de Volder has been tipped as the leader for the team, but for me, he's basically a rider better suited to the flatter Flemish races.
That's a very good point you bring up, is the Pro Tour has stretched all of these teams to the limit. We'll have to see what effect that has later on in the year, but the managers having to shepherd their troops all over the world nowadays in a number of different races. Sometimes the teams racing 3 different races simultaneously, so a lot of changes coming down in international cycling, mostly brought on because of the Pro Tour. Here we see Johan Verstappen being dropped by the leading 2 riders, Novell and Wesemann, and a little bit further down you see De Kort, and then further down the road is Benetton. So Benetton, the first to be dropped, looked to be the weakest the last climb, and now he's probably gone for good from the front group. And it's been a very tough stage race so far today. And Benjamin Novell looking very good at the front with Stefan Wesemann.
Wesemann just doing enough here, the greater experience of the 2. Not overdoing it. He knows there's an awful long way to race, nearly 90 kilometres, 57 miles still to ride. He's not going to push it too hard, and if Novell wants to push it hard, he'll follow him when he has to. But this is the way it was at the start after 30 kilometres now. The 2 strong men had 3 visitors for an hour or 2, and they've sent them all back towards the peloton. The hills in this area are very, very steep, and they hurt. They're not that long, but as you can see, the damage they've just done. Now, this is interesting because Rabobank have put all of their men up near the front for Bogart, I suspect, as they now keep an eye on the action. It's not going to be long now, Paul, before we see 1 or 2 people start to split away here. That's Decker on the left of our picture as well.
Yeah, Eric Decker also in pretty good form. That's Michael Bogart in the middle. I would think Michael Bogart thinking about a bit of revenge. He was second in the Amstel Gold Race. He's been in the top 3 of the Amstel Gold Race basically since 1999, and you can see the time gap there, and it's obviously because we're coming the hills. It's 2 minutes and 42 seconds, So it really has plummeted. Oscar Freire stuck in the middle, I would think, would have to be used as a wild card, having been beaten in Amstel Gold Race, Bob, and not too far away in Flèche-Wallonne, which is not his kind of a finish. But I would think today, having not come up with the goods in the Amstel Gold Race, they'll have to give the chance to Michael Bogert.
Michael Bogert was second in this race last year, just barely losing out to incredibly on-form David Rebellin. So Bogert looking for a big win. He's won Amstel in the past and always been close. This year was no exception. He was right up there at the finish, but just not quite able to get the win. Danilo De Luca won Amstel, then Flèche, and here we see an attack by the CSC team. See Paolo Bettini also not too far away from the front. He's had a very quiet spring himself, and I'm surprised to see that Bettini hasn't done quite a bit better. The gap has come down precipitously for our two leaders to 2 minutes and 43 seconds just in the very, very recent part of this race. Quick step bridging across to the CSC rider, and now you can see T-Mobile rider. It looks like it might be that's an interesting place to attack from the side of the road. If you got to do it, though, and you're ready, you might as well give it a try. Vinokurov, I think, is coming across to the front group now.
I think it's the Russian rider Gusov who's made the move here, but they're quickly bridging the gap. The strongmen making a move. The Côte d'Ivoire has hurt a lot of riders here. Now, Westerman went first over the top again, so he's building a points competition lead in the Little King of the Hills competition, but 5 men trying to get themselves together now. You get some idea of the steepness of the Côte d'Ivoire just there off that bottom bend, but look how quickly this group has opened the gap. It was all done by the Team CSC man who chose to do a little bit of cyclocross. The gap suddenly from 5:10 has plummeted to 2:42, so they know they've got the leaders under control. They're just trying now to shuffle up the pack and see which ones can get away here. But as we say, Bob, the elastic is stretching.
Well, Benjamin Noval is, I suppose you would say, the least experienced of the two riders in the front. He's never actually won a professional race in his career. He turned professional back in 2001 and rode for the small Spanish team Relax Fuenlabrada for 3 seasons until he was brought on board to Team US Postal Service last year, where he was really an unbelievable found, because he's a man that we hadn't talked very much about. And then the next minute, he's at the front doing big turns for Lance in races like the Tour de France.
Another Brunel discovery, the director of the, as it was, US Postal, now Team Discovery, a very shrewd operator. Speaks fluent Spanish, used to race on the Spanish team himself, so he keeps a close eye on the Spanish cycling scene. And this was his latest discovery. Excuse the pun.
Very good pun. But in fact, the other discovery was the Japanese rider who he had in the early part of the season in the Tour de Langkawi. They've tried to internationalize their squad this year, and of course it's a very big squad with almost 30 members, and the reason for that is because I think Discovery Channel's ideology is to try and get as much publicity around the world as possible for their channel, which is why they're very much emulating what Motorola did in the 1990s, putting together a team with a whole mix of international characters. Facerman put a lot of effort into this, just having a look down there to see if there's a problem with that back tire. I don't think there was. It seems to get exaggerated by the fact that we're in a very rough part of the Ardennes here. These roads are narrow, very bumpy, hardly used at all during the winter months when they can be very often covered with snow. And as they drop away from the summit of the Côte d'Ivoire, once they come down into the small town of Stocker at the bottom, the town is Stavelot. That's an indication of the start of the Côte de Stocker, and no respite at all, because they drop back down into Stavelot and then immediately start the climb of the Haute Levée, which I don't think they've done for a couple of years.
That's true. It's been reintroduced this year, and it is a nasty climb. But the roads around here now are beautiful. But as you can see, we haven't got quite the crowds of Paris-Roubaix or even the Amstel Gold Race, because this is a very lightly populated area of Belgium. Here's Jens Voigt, who had a wonderful time out in the Flèche-Wallonne a few days ago, and it looks as though he's come up to this group, and that'll give a little bit of help to the other rider, who I think was in fact Peter Lutenberger, who got up and started the move. On motorbike here, rather anxious to get out of the way, but this is the group that's come together. 84 kilometres to go. Voigt he just loves racing, and he hates it when the pace isn't full on. Look at him waving his arms, keeping the action going. He's an incredible rider.
He's a strong boy. I tell you what, you don't want to get on the wrong side of Jens Voigt when you get into a breakaway situation like this. That is Gusev, who's up there as well, a rider who in the early part of the season was a long-time leader of the prologue of Paris-Nice, a name that I hadn't heard of until the start of this year. Jens Voigt, what a remarkable recovery, Bob, because he was the man who was caught with around about 5 kilometres to go towards the end of the Flèche Wallonne, and here he is again doing battle on the roads of Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Incredible to see Jens Voigt out on the attack, driving the pace there. Paolo Bettini, it seemed like, even having a hard time coming through. Paolo Bettini in the gold helmet from the Quick-Step team has gone back through the line of racers. A couple of Rabobank riders, Fassa Bortolo, but it's CSC driving the tempo right now. That could be Mirko Celestino of the Domini Vacanze team coming to the front. So this could be a very serious breakaway with Bettini, Voigt, Celestino, and if that's David Rebellin from the Gerolsteiner squad, that would be something serious indeed. So now the race is flat out, and the peloton scrabbling behind to get back on terms with the second group out on the road.
Well, you just saw a quick glimpse there. The riders come down from the right-hand side there into the outskirts of Stavelot, take a sharp right-hand turn up the slopes of the Stocker climb, and then drop back down into the other side of town. Very complicated if you're an organizer trying to get them in and out of this very small town. There's the race leaders' car going round the corner there. That's the corner, the right-hand corner for Stocker, and those people there have got a very good chance, because not only do they see the race going up Stocker, they get a chance there to see them coming down on the other side of the road.
Very sharp turn. Thankfully it's not too wet. Well, it's not wet at all today, which is a big relief. So here's a little chance to see the crowd now. This is where they've been waiting in this lovely town. First onto the climb, the Côte de Stocker, is Besseman and Benjamin Noval, as they now will dig deep here, because I would think already the riders they have left can only be about 45 seconds in front of that group being led by Jens Voigt, and they're looking rather serious now. The race is all of a sudden very much on now, having had our little preamble down to Bastogne and turned around the American tank, which still stands in the square down in Bastogne, remnants of the World Wars, of course, when America came here and repatriated the Belgians.
Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah, there's a bulge coming down here now. It's very narrow, this road, as they go around these left hands. You've got to be careful. This will be Walter Benetto. He's still out on his own between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, I think.
We'll get a chance to see how difficult these roads are, and it really is bouncing around quite a bit. These roads very much damaged by the coldness of the winter. It's very frosty. Benetto panicking a little bit, looking over his shoulder to see what's coming, and it's the express train there led by Jens Voigt, while we go a little bit closer to the front. And these are the two leaders on the slopes of the Côte de Stocker. A steep climb at certain points. It kicks in at 21% gradient. It doesn't look that difficult on a television camera, but I tell you one thing, I'm pretty sure you and I couldn't ride up it now, Bob.
I think I might have to get off and walk at this point in the race. Very steep, and it comes a long ways from the start, and of course there's a number of very tough climbs to go to the finish, and the gap hovering just under 2 minutes right now. I think that will be swept away very quickly, as these two riders, having been out on the attack all day long, very fatigued, a lot of lactic acid in the leg muscles, and you will see a totally different pace from the peloton when they get onto the slopes in just a few moments, led at this point by Jens Voigt and his teammate Gustav. And here we see the attack from the Quick-Step team from the peloton now.
Well, this is the hard work now being done by Quick-Step, as they're trying now to liven up the reaction here. There's a lot of riders got across to that group, but it's hurt a few riders as well. It is Peter Luttenberger who is up there on the third wheel, and the riders now trying to get clear on Stocker.
Well, you know what? We haven't talked very much about Paolo Bettini, the Olympic champion, since the start of the season. He's on the tail of those two teammates there, Bob, but he didn't look all that comfortable, and he really seems to be having a hard time this year getting into the form that's seen him be a really dominant rider in the one-day races.
Struggling a little bit there now. Look at Mirko Celestino's face. He's been going very hard, putting a lot of energy into this breakaway. The rider from the defending champions team, Gerolsteiner of Davide Robedin, seems to be Fabian Wegman, who's a very good climber. I saw him racing so hard for the King of the Mountain jersey in the Giro d'Italia last year. CSC Gustavs is making the pace. He has had a great spring so far, coming up with big results. And of course, Jens Voigt, never far from the front of any attack, one of the most aggressive bike racers in international cycling today.
Sorry, Paul.
A lot of the big names seem to have actually missed out here. I'm surprised to see a large group like this getting away on the slopes of the Côte d'Oine, because everybody knew this was going to be the very strategic part of the race. It looks as if it is Luttenberger who is in that group, with Carsten Kroon, the representative there for Rabobank. Lotz is up there as well for Quick-Step. Interesting to note that Pietro Cacchioli has got himself into that group, and the other T-Mobile rider in the group is supposedly Oscar Sevilla.
Well, it'd be nice to see him back in the action. He promised so much, and he had all sorts of problems with his team and contracts, and finished up eventually changing teams this year, and now he's on a team where he can do something. Maybe this is his moment. Novell wants to have a word. I think he wants a drink here, and again it's Vesseman first over the top, as he's done on all of the climbs so far. There is our statue, statuette, which Paul was telling us about, of the great Eddie Merckx. The thing about this climb is it still continues a little bit before it starts to tip down yet again. 1:18 to Group 3, so that indicates that one or two of the riders left by the leaders are still dangling around somewhere in the middle.
But have a quick look at that time gap there. It's 1:19, and that's actually come down almost 4 minutes in 10 kilometres. It gives you just an idea how difficult the chase is at the back part of the race. These guys, I think, have got the big advantage going through the Côte d'Oie and Stocker of being in a small group at the front, because it's less complicated getting to the bottom of this climb of Stocker. Jens Voigt is an unbelievable bike rider. He's had a great start to the season. As you said, I think, Phil, the thing I appreciate most about Jens Voigt, as he catches here, this is Koen de Kort, who is in that early morning breakaway of 5 riders. Voigt is prepared to race from February right the way through until October, and every race he starts, he wants to go out and do battle.
Yes, rather like Eric Zabel. Eric's now getting a little bit long in the tooth to find his great form that we've known at this time of the year. And boy, do the team miss him, because they're not winning any races without Eric Zabel just now. T-Mobile. Celestino's second wheel here on Voigt, and just tucked in behind there will be the Phonak rider, Santiago Botero. Funny thing was, before we came on air today, we were talking about whatever happened to Santiago Botero. Well, here he is in the breakaway. New team this year, Phonak.
New team looking for some extra motivation. He moved across to the big T-Mobile squad a couple of years ago and did absolutely nothing really to show the successes that took him to King of the Mountains in the Tour de France, and of course stage winner. These are the cobblestones through the town of Stavelot, and T-Mobile taking on board a few drinks there. I'm not sure that that was an official feeding point, Bob, but some of these teams in Belgium here have the ability to put themselves in the right place at the right time, so the referees don't see them feeding up there.
Well, Benjamin Novall calling for the team car to come up to hand him some water. He was lucky there that the T-Mobile squad gave him one of their bottles, and little cooperation in the breakaway, so never a bad idea to help out the riders in the break that are trying to help your riders. So Vesseman and Novall will carry on with their breakaway. It was strange to see a rider of the quality of Paolo Bettini being dropped out of that second group on the road, being led by Jens Voigt. Bettini having a very hard time on that last climb and seemed to be clearly dropped by the pressure being put onto that breakaway by Jens Voigt. And it was nice to see Santiago Botero being able to make the change in tempo there, and Jens Voigt going very hard, down to 1 minute and 25 seconds now to our 2 leaders.
Just look at the gears these guys are pounding as they continue over the cobbles here and climb at the same time. This a very difficult section. This is the climb which has been reintroduced, the Côte de Haute-Levée. 3.5 kilometers of it all, and this comes straight off the back of Stocker. This is going to be tough now, and those boys who've thrown the gauntlet down behind, because we have to remind ourselves too that the average speed for the race today is 39.7 kilometers an hour, virtually 25 miles an hour in this terrain. A lot of people are going to pay the price for that.
I think the two guys at the front are going to pay a certain amount of their price too. I think this is Johan Verstrepen. He's also coming back from that leading group of 5. He's being picked up by that charging group of riders. I think, Bob, a lot of riders will have been caught out by the acceleration there of Jens Voigt, because big names like, of course, David Rebellin are absent. Danilo De Luca has not made the junction here at all, and they do certainly need to be just that little bit more attentive, because this section of the race this year is a little bit harder than it has been in the past, I think, because of the reintroduction here of this difficult climb, the Côte de Haute-Levée, which is renowned by the fact it's got that great big piece of concrete separating it down the middle of the road there. It's on the way up towards Francorchamps, and the way the gap is tumbling, I wonder if these riders will survive to the top of the climb, because Jens Voigt, I think, wants to pull it all back together very quickly.
12% grade at the bottom of the climb where the riders are on now. It gets a little bit more gradual towards the top of the climb, but this is coming quick on the heels of the climb just before. You can see Paolo Bettini has clawed his way back up into the breakaway. Wegemann is just tacked onto the back there with Karsten Kroon, and Jens Voigt, as he is always never far from the front, and Santiago Botero is on his wheel, but Jens Voigt allows 1 or 2 riders to come through and then takes a monstrous pull. Unbelievably strong athlete.
He's been so strong though, Bob. He's actually dispatched his own teammate Peter Luttenberger off the back of the group here. Luttenberger is a climber, whereas Jens tends to be just a very strong bike rider. The two Rabobank boys are still there. That'll be Karsten Groen and Peter Winning. Those two riders in amongst that group of what, 7 riders. That's all that's left.
Just thinking about Jens Voigt there. He probably looked at Luttenberger because Luttenberger is Austrian. This man on the front here, Jens Voigt, is a German. He probably said, well, if it's too hot in here for you, get out of the kitchen.
Well, he's doing an awful lot of work and he's not expecting any help from the rest. I'm not sure that's a wise situation with 50 miles still left to ride here, 79 kilometres. Still an awful long way to go, but the crowd have taken over the main road here, that's for sure. As Voigt still looks over straight at the face of Santiago Botero, no help coming from him. And this is the bicycle of Stefan Wessermann, who still looks pretty cool out there, and so too, I have to say, does Noval. Both not panicking because they know what's going on behind, they know the chase is coming up, they're still riding their own race here, and these two boys look pretty cool. I think we're seeing the foundations being laid here of the decisive moves of the day, and I think a lot of riders back there have sensed this, and that's why Danilo De Luca and Michael Bogart, and I'm pretty sure David Rebellin, have got to try and put matters to rights, because soon we're going to have a select chase group having been made up of only the strong men.
These roads now, you see, we've just come off a very large main road from Haute-Levée down to the outskirts of Francorchamps. But once you turn off again onto these tiny little roads, Bob, here in the Ardennes, these roads are so hard. They're narrow roads. They're very difficult to organise the chase. And that's why I think there's a certain amount of panic in that group behind, because these guys know they've got to nail it back as quickly as possible. Otherwise, a well-organised group is going to get formed.
Well, Ted at the back here now is winning, and this group here have got 2 passengers now, because they must be aware that Michael Bogart and Eric Decker are racing to try and come up to this group. And this is the group containing Fabian Weckmann, Bettini, Jens Voigt, Karsten Groen, Peter Wenning, Santiago Botero and Celestino. The two Rabobank are not going to help here now, because they've got 2 more on the way across, and it's not that big of a gap. And very shortly we're going to have a very select group. Right over to the right of our picture, in the zigzags of the motorbikes, lost in the middle there, the 2 leaders, then the 7 chasers, and then the big hitters are trying to reach them all. Stunning countryside. It's very hard countryside to race a bike in, but really you come down here for a touring holiday, it is beautiful.
Well, I think at touring pace it is beautiful at around about 20 kilometres an hour. Let's not forget these guys have been riding at an average of 40 kilometres an hour since the start, and it's down to around about 10 or 15 seconds. If you can see the yellow car occasionally up the road, that's the yellow car of the neutral service vehicle, which is right behind the 2 leaders. But these riders here now are very rapidly closing in, and the main field, which is not very many riders left, just further back, they're still only around about 35 seconds behind this group, so it could all come together on the Côte de Rosiers.
17 seconds the gap now. That's just around that top corner, I would suspect, and then we're going to have 9 front runners. Say a lot for these 2 boys though, because there's a lot of racing going on behind on today's Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and they are not closing this down all that quickly. Little downhill stretch coming before we start the climbs again. Wessermann allowing Noval to do his share of the pacemaking. Remember, these 2 have been out front since 30 kilometres into the race, and here we are now. So let me just say, 160 kilometres, exactly 100 miles now. These riders have been in the lead.
I think just looking at the attitude now, once they saw that red car go past, that red car is the car of the race referee, and that's an indication that the gap is well inside of 30 seconds. Now, this is Group 3 on the road. That was Alexander Vinokourov. That's Jörg Yachts there in the dark blue. He's also a man. That's Matthias Kessler going through, and a lot of people have put his name down as the dark horse to possibly do something rather special towards the end of today, and that is something that I really believe T-Mobile have to do, because they are certainly short on a little bit of victories this year. There was Kim Kierken going through, the Luxembourg national champion. Looks like David Rebellin sitting at the back of the group, and he's just keeping an eye on affairs for the moment. Very good tactician, Rebellin. He won't panic at all. He'll leave it up to everybody else to try and do most of the pacemaking, and I still think he's got it in his belt to do something special at the end of today.
Well, he's not going to waste his energy too soon, because he knows we're now entering the purple section of this race, the tough section. There's Paolo Bettini. Looks like a sprinter, is a sprinter, just broken his glasses, but apart from that, everything's going pretty well for him. He is a great bike rider, he is the Olympic champion, and This could be the start of his season now. He's on his way back. His form is good. He's yo-yoed a little bit today, Bob, so he's under pressure, but he looks cool again now.
He did a good job to put his sunglasses back together,
going
about 80 kilometers an hour with no hands on the bars on the descent. That is quite a talented bike racer. I think I would have had to discard those if that happened to me. And there we see the group containing Bettini coming right on the heels of our 2 leaders who have been out in the front of the bike.
And is certainly looking to try and keep hold of if he can.
Well, in that same stretch of road now with these traffic calming measures along, so they're not that far behind, a couple of minutes just over as they continue on. This is Marcel Strauss sitting at the back, while Van der Walle, or rather Bram Tankink it is, at the front setting the pace. These are the big teams now. Faster Waterloo moving up as well, along with Phonak. And this indeed is Martin Den Bakker. He's been around a long time as Martin Den Bakker, but he's still a very strong rider, isn't he? And this is the top team of the moment, Rabobank. And they keep getting results. They've lost their Director General this year, Jan Raas. Bit of a disagreement with the team, so it's now Theo de Roy who is the top dog.
Well, there's Dekker moving up on the right-hand side. He's a man who has got pretty sensible form here at this part of the season. I wouldn't be surprised to see him being aggressive as we get to the latter part of the race. He's a bike rider who has been around for a long, long time and had some pretty bad luck a couple of years ago when he broke his leg in the very difficult race of Milan-San Remo.
No sign yet of Levi Leipheimer. He's on the team today, Levi. This is a race for him, could be. We'll see how he survives the final showdown, which is not too far ahead. We're on the climb of the Côte de Stocker, on the climb of the Côte de Rossier, just on that 4 kilometres in length, at about 1 kilometre up it here. And no signs of anybody tiring. These 5 men are holding it well together. One must question why Belosheviks fell back from this group, who having chased for a long time to get up to it. Because a 6-man up here might have made a big difference right now. There's the board, 2 minutes, I think, might have been a few odd seconds there. Chalk wearing out as the field just keep what is a very regular chase back. Nobody's in a hurry here to scurry up to the leaders, because once they do, we're going to see plenty of riders attack. There's the winners in the past, 58 victories for Belgium. They're well out on their own, with 10 victories for Italy in second place. Surprisingly, Switzerland have done rather well in this race over the years with 6. France have won it 5 times, but not since Bernard Hinault back in 1980, can you believe? And the Dutch, being the flat country, don't like this race too much.
Well, they certainly don't, but I think they have got an outside chance of getting the victory this afternoon with Michael Bogert, who's in very good form after second place in the Amstel Gold Race. And, of course, with Eric Dekker, the man we saw just at the front end of the main field a couple of moments ago. Just caught a glimpse as well of the man who's supposed to be wearing number 136 in the main field, Georg Tocznik, in his national champions jersey of Austria. So he's obviously had a bit of a mistake with the man in the light blue jersey on the front there, his own teammate Marcel Strauss, who they probably shared the same room last night, and somebody picked up the wrong jersey.
I guess you're probably right, yeah. And Tocznik is a climber. He'd be a much better bet today if he's got the new form.
I think he'll actually have to sacrifice his chances to the in-form rider on this squad, and that is David Rebellin. A good ride by David Rebellin could also put him up into the lead in the World Cup as we then go into the break in that competition, as we head up towards the big races of the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France, and then resume in the month of August with races like the San Sebastian Classic and, of course, the Championship of Zurich.
And with the confidence that Rebellin has right now, he'll take some stopping, I think, because his 2 victories have come with uphill finishes, the Cauberg in the Amstel Gold, the Huy in the Flèche Wallonne. This climb also finishes uphill. It levels just for the sprint to the line, so it's definitely a finish for him today.
2 nasty climbs inside the last about 6 kilometres of racing. The one which is the penultimate climb, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, is an unbelievable beast of a climb. It's only around about 1.5 kilometres in length, but it kicks up at 11%. And then the finishing climb as well, up to Ons, is a long, long drag. And if you've got the big, strong legs, you've got the ability to jump away and survive to the finish, which is exactly what Tyler Hamilton did last year.
Yeah, it was a great result. 65 kilometres to go, creeping up slowly towards the top of the Côte de Rossier. 1 kilometre still to climb. Martin Dembacker leading Eric Decker at the front of the peloton. Crédit Agricole are trying to break in on the scene. No Cofidis, of course. They're still on their voluntary self-imposed suspension while they try and sort out the internal drugs problems which they've apparently got. And it's all very quiet in the Cofidis camp right now. Meanwhile, back behind the peloton, the riders begin to slip away from the front of the field here.
This is where to be now. I just caught another little glimpse of the leader of the World Cup, Stefan Weissermann, just over to the right-hand side there. And in fact, he's had a specially made helmet to match up with his racing jersey. It's quite smart to see Stefan riding so well. The record holder, I think, in wins in the famous Peace Race, a race which used to link the great capitals of Warsaw, Berlin and Prague, and he won that race on 5 separate occasions. Almost unbeatable, and I don't think anyone else has done ever quite so well.
No, a friend of mine actually stayed with him this week for a day in his wonderful large house he's got in Germany, and he said he was coming to it for the first time, this event, because of the fact he wants to take the leader's jersey into the midsummer recess or the early spring recess before he comes out for later on again. And well, he's the sort of rider that works so hard for success. It would be nice if he could do that, but he knows it's a slim chance, because the whole Rebelline in his sights is not going to be easy on this sort of a race.
And of course the onslaught I'm expecting to see from Paolo Bettini, who's not too far away from the top of the overall classification in that race, as we now come to just a kilometre to go to the summit of the Côte de Rosier. These 5 riders are still surviving. On the front there is Bram Tankink, and look at the pace here being lifted by the man who's come back from injury after a week. This is Jörg Yats, the winner of the Tour of the Mediterranean and Paris-Nice.
Well, it must be enthusiasm over strength here. I don't know. He's just driving on and he's getting away. I didn't really think he'd be competitive. I didn't really see how he could be, but that must be a very minor fracture to the elbow, in all fairness, because it happened just 1 week and 1 day ago. Anyway, he's ploughing on and keeping the pressure on, and he's taking with him his teammate here.
Arvidsson again.
It's Kurt Attel Arvidsson, who was put back in his place. He's now trying to go clear again. Plenty of strapping on the wrist area there. It must be in the forearm rather than the elbow, I think.
Whatever it is, I can tell you one thing: over these very bouncy roads in the Ardennes, every little bump will be going right up through his arm there, and he will be feeling that pain. They're obviously now trying to set something up for their teammate, Michele Bartoli. And people are probably thinking, well, we'll just let this man clear off the front, because he can't win Liège-Bastogne-Liège with a broken wrist and elbow.
That's what they thought about Tyler Hamilton when he won his stage in the Tour de France with his broken rib.
I was going to say exactly the same thing with his fractured collarbone. Coming across there, one of the riders from Crédit Agricole, but this will certainly put the cat amongst the pigeons here, and 1 or 2 riders must certainly need to react to this quite quickly, because even if this man has got a fairly serious injury to his elbow, he's still got excellent form this season. He's the kind of rider, if you give him a couple of minutes advantage with a teammate, they'll have a hard job pulling him back. Those are the 5 leaders, and still it's Marcel Strauss on the front, tête de la course, as they head up to the summit here of the Côte de Rosier, which they will cover. They will reach, having covered 194 kilometres. That leaves them just around about 62 kilometres to go to the finish. There is Bram Tankink in the middle there, in 3rd position, and they will probably be thinking about series of attacks to come down towards the end. One man we won't be see riding for Quick Step, and this looks like your old buddy there, David Bramati, going off the back.
Looks a bit too heavy for these hills, doesn't he? David now struggling a little bit as the field is. He's the kilometre point for the bunch now. This is the tail of the bunch. In fact, this is Nicky Ebersol has now also gone off the back after his pacemaking. So they've shed another Phonak cyclist now as the leaders come up over the top. Looks this time as though Marcel Strauss will have gone over the top in 1st place. Sarsi completes the 5. It hasn't done any damage to the breakaway. It slowed them down a little bit, I suspect, but they didn't split up. We didn't expect them to. It's just a steady climb.
But maybe it's because of this descent that acceleration came there from the man who this year won the Tour of the Med. In fact, the race referee is pulling himself out of the gap quite quickly, so that would indicate that the peloton is approaching quite rapidly. And they're not really insisting on the descent either. They're not really picking up the pace as much as they might want to. I think they're trying to recover somewhat, as the main field is now heading towards the summit of the Côte de Rosier, and I think the next time gap we get will be around about the 2-minute mark.
Well, the peloton is still very large, and remember in Flèche Wallonne, much to our surprise, A very big peloton started the final climb up to the finish midweek. It was a big peloton in the Amstel Gold till the very end as well. Here's the Alessio boys, still working very hard, trying to keep things together here. This looks as though it's nearest the camera is Vladimir Milojevich, and the other rider with him is Ellis Rastelli.
Well, those two riders at the wrong end of the main peloton. I think they will be hoping for a performance by Franco Pellizotti or Alessandro Bertolini as we get to the latter part of the race, but they will have to do something pretty special to come up with a performance like their man Magnus Backstedt produced in the recent Paris-Roubaix Classic when he walked away with a great sprint victory on the velodrome there, although I think you and I were rooting a little bit for Roger Hammond, the Englishman who finished in 3rd place.
Yes, poor Roger never slept that night, trying to work out how he'd lost the race, planning every move over and over again in his head. But 3rd place was Britain's best ever finish for 22 years, I think it was. No, 32 years. Yeah, 32,
Barry Hoban
1972.
Barry Hoban.
Time flies when you're enjoying yourself.
So these guys now are starting to whip up the pace on the descent here of the Côte de Rosier. This is, I think, probably the most beautiful day we've seen in the Ardennes for this classic over the last couple of years, and we've been to 1 or 2 together, and this is a real good day. Ideal racing conditions for these riders. Superb temperature, around about 18 degrees Celsius. A little chill in the air as the riders go down these descents at speeds approaching 40 miles an hour. The chill factor will increase will decrease the temperature as they try to whip themselves up to a fairly decent average speed. But the writing is on the wall for these guys because all of the big names are in this group we're looking at, and it's another team on the front now starting to whip up the pacemaking. It looks as if it might be the Quick Step Davitamon team, and they're obviously thinking about their man, the champion of Italy, Paolo Bettini, who would like to get himself a 3rd win here in Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Well, they lost more than a minute of the lead over that climb. They're down to 1.5 minutes now. Didn't see what the board said, but it should have said around 1:35. As we're watching, those are the list of the climbs still to come in this year's Liège-Bastogne-Liège. So there's still plenty of tough road that lies ahead. Next climb will be the Côte de la Vaquée, which will take with 52 kilometers to go. And I think by then we could be very close to regrouping.
Inaki Isazi on the front for Euskaltel-Euskadi, and taking a bit of a back seat for the moment. Jürgen van der Waal on the back end of the group here, number 145. We saw him in the early part of the season taking part in the Tour de Langkawi with his teammate Dave Brylance. Unfortunately, Dave Brylance not able to get himself up for this race because he, like many other riders in the early part of the season, has been involved in an accident and is not able to start Liège-Bastogne-Liège, a race which I think probably would have suited his capabilities.
Definitely, especially while we're going along in a big bunch like this as we go through the S's again, continue a descent. These are wonderful cycling roads at any time of the year, but today they're particularly pleasant. And these leaders, having been out in front for a long time now, breaking away after some 60+ kilometers this morning, and we're now I would put them in the lead at the moment of about 130 kilometers they've been out front. It's quite a long time when you're doing all the work yourself, and knowing that the hard part of this race is still to come. We're just 60 kilometers from home, 1:15, so the time check was correct. It's come down drastically now. Still got those 2 riders in between.
Well, those 2 riders have got themselves about 20 seconds off the front end of the main peloton, but this gap has really come down dramatically over the last few kilometers, and you can see the race organization is moving all the cars and all the motorbikes out of the gap because they're trying to make sure that it's a nice, clean, safe race over the next few kilometers or so, as they know this race is about to come back together. It will probably come back together just before the start of the Côte de la Vaquée, another long climb, a climb of 3.2 kilometers, which kicks up at an average gradient of 6.3%, and it's probably on that climb that these riders are going to get themselves caught.
No, they're still working as best they can, but I think there's some tired legs now, and the heart will be out of it, having seen all the cars leave them. Horrible sign when all the cars pass you. You know what it means. It means that people are maybe only 45-50 seconds back of you. Here comes the tandem from CSC. It's the Scandinavian tandem, this one. Oh, there's 3 of them now, so somebody's got across that we didn't know about. It's a Botcherov who's come across. A little bit surprised about that, but he's come across unbeseen to us, and we've now got 3 very strong chasers.
That's rather interesting to see Alexander Bocharov getting into this group, because this now changes the whole setup of this counter-attack, because with Jörg Yats in there, a man who's got excellent condition, although he is injured, with a teammate Kurt Adler-Avesen in the leading group as well, they will get a lot of help from Bocharov, who made the switch across during the winter transfer season to become a new member of Crédit Agricole. And I think he'll be looking to try and put himself in with a good performance here at Liège-Bastogne-Liège. But I cannot believe that the main field would allow these riders just to move off the front of the peloton. In fact, they're just hovering 20 seconds clear. And on these small, little, tiny, winding roads throughout the Ardennes, as soon as you're 15 or 20 seconds away from the peloton, you're actually out of sight. And that's a very difficult thing in the sport of professional cycling, because very often it's out of sight and out of mind.
We're out of Bocharov, as he now continues to drive quite well. Very strong ride. He finished second. His best result ever was second place in the Tour Down Under in Australia in 2002. His only victory, which was really before he turned pro, was a stage winner in the Tour de l'Avenir. But even so, he's a very underestimated bike rider. There's the field, and there's our little man, Paolo Bettini, beginning to harass the bunch now and stalk them, let them know he's there. He's looking for the chance now to start the reaction, and he can hardly contain himself. He loves this course. He knows the final legs probably as well as anybody else currently riding. He's won this race twice, and he's obviously relishing the finale today.
Well, it's a race where you also have to be very patient nowadays. In the previous years, in the 1970s and 80s, he actually used to finish right in the very heart of Liège. But now the race organisation in the last couple of years have actually added several climbs in the last 20 kilometres. The most difficult one is the third climb from the end, the Côte de Sartillemont. And that is where you have to, I think, if you want to win this bike race, lay down the foundations for victory. Try and get a small group off the front and survive then down to the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. And that's what we've seen many times in the past. And when Paolo Bettini got himself his first win in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, he actually attacked on the climb of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas and was able to survive all the way to the finish. But you do have to hold back and try and keep all of the energy for what is always a very difficult last 20 kilometres of racing here.
Well, we're in the second and final feed here at La Glaise, which is also on the outskirts of Stoumont. 58 kilometres left to ride, and that is just over an hour of racing left, probably an hour and 20 minutes because of the climb still to come. We'll drop down to Remouchon before we hit the climb of the Côte de la Redoute. We've still got the climb of Vecquet to come. Latest checks, 38 seconds now for the chasing trio, still a minute 16. So the peloton has actually dropped back very slightly. So there's a good chance those three chasers, Yatsky, Arvesen and Bocharov, will join these leaders, and then it might make it a bit more difficult.
Well, if you give these riders a start when they get to the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute, it's going to make it very difficult for these riders to pull back men like Jörg Yats. And I wonder if in the back of these riders' minds they're wondering how badly, in fact, Jörg Yats is injured, because the way he's riding his bike, it's certainly not affected his form on the machine, but it will certainly have affected his ability to keep himself at the front end of the race when they have to go around the very difficult and tortuous descents.
But I can't believe either he can pull on the bars climbing a mountain like La Redoute, which is extremely hard and will call for maximum effort from the upper body as well as the legs. But we're going to find out pretty soon. These five boys know that the catch is imminent from the three chasers. They're looking where they are. And on this long straight road, they're definitely going to be pretty much in the same straight. That's the distance to go, just over a kilometre to the next climb, which is the Côte de Vecquet. And surely we're going to have three join them on that climb, and those that can hang on will do so, because the other three fresher legs behind are going to start pushing the pace on this next climb.
You can see now they're going through the second feeding point of the day, and this is an exceptionally long race at almost 260 kilometres, which is why it's very important, even at times like this, to make sure you keep plenty of food on board. That's a high calorific drink that the man here in second position there, Bram Tankink, was getting down his throat, and that was probably just to try and raise the level of glucose in the blood over these last few kilometres, because he knows what is on the horizon. And what is on the horizon for these guys is the Côte de la Vecquet, which is not too far away from where they are at the moment, as we get a chance here just to look at the face here of Laurent Lefebvre.
Here's the chateau just alongside the Côte. We're about half a kilometre from it. Freude de Cour, and very nice one it is. Looks as though it's in perfect condition. Good one for you to buy that, Paul.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask for
at least one room of it.
Just asking for a loan off you, actually.
Excellent. These are the riders, Botcherov, Yatsky and Arvidsson. Yatsky now slipped to the back here and having a drink. He's also taken on fuel for the rest of the ride, so he's looking like a man who could finish this, which I find an exceptional performance if he does get to the end of this classic. As Paul said, it's one of the longest of the year. Milan-San Remo is out on its own on that score, but it's nothing like as hard a terrain as it is today. Arvidsson, who tried on his own and gave up and went back to the peloton, has come out again with Yatsky and seems to have recovered. The field are beginning to get down to business. They're spread a little bit here as they're all busy rummaging in their little feeding bags to stoke up before the last showdown. They should all come back together again. They're running at 1:16 behind the leaders, while the actual chasers are closing in now. They're just on 30 seconds, if that, because those motorbikes up around the corner could be heralding the capture of the 5 leaders. Botcherov stepping on the gas. There they are in the little gaggle of flotilla of motorbikes. So the catch is going to come right on the climb of the Côte de la Vaquée. And I think it'll be unfortunate for the boys up front because they may not have the legs to go with these 3 as they come up.
I find that leading group looks as if it's splintering already on the slopes of the Côte de la Vaquée here, and it's in fact 1 or 2 riders are moving up the front. This is Bram Tankink here. Right, I wonder if anybody's around the corner there because there's a vehicle just in front, which might be a neutral service vehicle. We look back down here. Here coming across is Marcel Strauss. A little bit further back you can see Inaki Isazi. And I think we've seen the disappearance of Van der Waele, who was the first man of the race to attack actually this morning. He attacked after 13 kilometres of racing, and here he is now just on the right-hand side. He's been picked up by the 3 chasers, and he's probably quite surprised to see the man on the front there, Jorg Yats, as surprised as we were to actually see him in the bike race this afternoon.
Chocolat Jacques, you could do with some chocolat, I would think, right now to get some life back into those tired legs, but I think he's succumbed to it. Here comes the peloton starting the same climb now and at a gallop, to say the least. And still the Phonak boys are on the front. We've got 2 of them there, and so we've certainly got Tyler Hamilton in the mix. Bram Tankink here now setting the pace. And he's got still Marcel Strauss for company. We should call him Marcel Tochnig because he's got 1 number of his teammate on his back and his own on the bike. But he still looks as though he's pretty strong.
I find it quite amazing to see that performance coming from Jorg Yats because he did admit yesterday that he felt he could start the race, but he said he'd be starting the race without any expectations at all. And in fact, his only reason for starting would be to try and help his teammates, Ivan Basso, Michele Bartoli, or even maybe Nicky Sorensen. But I tell you what, this is certainly helping them in an incredible way because he's making everybody in their race chase him down because you cannot give him too much of an advantage.
No, it just shows you too. You can't trust what riders say. They try to throw you off the scent. I remember Lance Armstrong saying he wasn't riding the Tour of Georgia to win.
Yeah, I remember that as well. He said, this is just preparation. I'm happy to go and race in the United States. But I did warn you beforehand that with that 30-kilometre time trial, it was going to be a big head-to-head between himself, Jens Voigt and Bobby Julich. And the fact that Bobby Julich has ridden well since the start of the season, I think Lance just wanted to prove once again that he's the #1 American.
Absolutely, and he really is. 54 kilometres to go, 1:09 seconds is the spread now. So they're still, funnily enough, going backwards, the peloton, just 1 or 2 seconds, while the breakaway, the head of the breakaway that is pushing on. It's only the head of the breakaway that's actually pulling away from that big pack. Tankink and Strauss keep a very nice rhythm going here, very nice indeed. Like to just have a look what's going on behind, because it can't be far before Botcherov and the CSC cross the gap. It looks as though Asazi is also... Oh, so Asazi's been joined by the other 3. Now he's trying to get the free lift back up to the 2 leaders.
Well, these riders now are approaching around about 50 kilometres to go to the finish, which is just outside of 30 miles. And for a man who was injured a week ago, this man has certainly not lost any of his form at all. There's Arvidsson going through in 2nd place. Botcherov, I think, taking a bit of a backseat on the flatter parts of this course. He's certainly not the kind of rider who's got the big power. But you tilt these roads up towards the skies, and he certainly is a most magical climber. We've seen that in the past in races like the Tour de France.
Yeah, and as I say, the Tour Down Under, he also rode well in the Barossa Valley down there in South Australia. They were in the colours of AG2R. He's now got himself a new berth in France with the Crédit Agricole, who gave away 1 or 2 of their big riders over the winter, like Stuart O'Grady, and he must be feeling he might have made a mistake now going to Cofidis. And of course Jens Voigt, who's having a wonderful season in the colours of CSC.
Well, Jens Voigt currently lying second overall in the Tour of Georgia, and I feel a bit sorry for Stuart O'Grady. He must really be kicking himself not being able to take part in the big races like Paris-Roubaix and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, although he was injured at the time. So maybe this period will be a good period for Stuart O'Grady. If the team does get back into competition, he maybe needed that rest away from the classics, and we could see him ride a very good Tour de France.
Which will be excellent. Let's hope so. Let's hope the team get in the Tour de France.
And the other rumours flying around, it's confirmed at the start this morning that in fact the current world champion Igor Astrolao has been allowed to move away from Team Cofidis and been permitted to sign for Team Lampre. So the world champion will be moving down to an Italian team. And probably I would think we wouldn't be too surprised to see him starting the Giro d'Italia.
No, which might go some way to patching up the season for him. We'll wait and see. We're looking down now at a very, very tired remnants of that leading 5 riders. As we now see the 3 chasers, they have crossed the gap. First men to see anybody at the head of this race since the second hour of racing today. But here come CSC and Crédit Agricole to join the 2 leaders, Marcel Strauss from Switzerland and Bram Tankink. 5 men in front, a lot more strength. The catch has come at a pretty good time for the 2 boys up front, because they're nearly over the top of the climb, which means that they may not get flicked and jumped as we go up the slopes. Tankink looking over his shoulder, and then Strauss, so he knows they've got company.
Well, I can't really imagine how much pain must be going through the mind of Jörg Jaetz to be in a situation like this. But one thing that was interesting was that during this last week, he's been treated by Olikar Folli, the man who looked after Tyler Hamilton in the Tour de France last year. And this man is a very interesting kind of coach, alternative medicine guy, and he brings a lot of mystical powers to the team, and maybe he's been able to bring some magnetic powers down to heal that elbow over the last week. Apparently he's been looking after Jaetz for the whole week, trying to get him in a position where he could just participate in the race here, and it really is quite remarkable. And sometimes you cannot scotch the approaches that some of these alternative medicines actually bring to sportsmen.
Well, he's in the leading group, and he's looking very strong right now, back in the leading peloton, which is the rest of the race. They're having to rethink their strategy, because 5 men are still clear, although they've changed ever so slightly. Paolo Bettini, that green top to his jersey, is also down there. It looks like it's a bit of a problem here for the Chocolat Jacques rider, who slipped away. Here he comes, Van der Walle.
Well, it really is a question of boom, boom, and out go the lights.
Big effort.
He's had a good try. He's got the team an awful lot of sponsorship publicity this afternoon, and right now I don't think he'll be seeing the finishing line in Anse. He'll be looking for a quick ride to the finish and possibly one of the early showers. Botcherov, though, has decided right now that he's very happy with this, and look at this acceleration. Jörg Jaetz there could not follow the wheel, as you see the acceleration coming from the little Russian climber over the summit here of the Côte de la Vecchie.
Just over 200 kilometres, or 207 kilometres covered right now of the scheduled 258. And this is not the road they really want at this stage of the chase, because you can see them far too far ahead down that long straight. The peloton will see this breakaway for sure. Marcel Strauss gets a bit of fluid down in there, but stays very much up. We've got 5 riders, but of course commentators' night, well, they're not the same 5 as they were at the start of the climb. So if we weren't seeing the pictures, that was when the confusion would start. This is Jatzky, Arvidsson, Botcherov, Tankink and Strauss, the last 2, the only 2 surviving the original 5 men. Peloton still further down the slopes of the Côte de Vecchie, as they now head up on this long straight road. And then we're set fair for the big one, the Côte de la Redoute, but it's still a little way away. It's not just round the corner. It's about 18 kilometres, in fact, to the climb.
But this is a very strategic moment in the race, and that's a very big gap that those guys have built themselves up to. It's around about 1.5 minutes, and that will put a lot of the other teams really onto the defensive. As you can see, Team Phonak moving forward, and they're thinking about the possibility of an attack in the latter part of the race from Tyler Hamilton. A team that's also been pretty much caught out is the team of Quick Step Davitamon, because they are seriously looking to Paolo Bettini to try and get them the victory here this afternoon. And I don't think any of these riders would have expected the attack to come from Jorg Yats as the main field air themselves going over the summit of the Côte de la Vecque. 17, 18 kilometers to go to the Côte de la Redoute. These guys have really got to set themselves up now to be in the first 10 or 15 places, and that time gap is slowly coming down to 1 minute and 14 seconds, so it's almost status quo to the time gap that it was at the start of the climb when these men rode across the gap.
It might well hold as we head to Rémichon and the climb. That's where the climb starts, in the little town of Rémichon. Lovely little place. Down the cobbled back street, turn right, under the motorway bridge, and off you go.
Oops.
Anybody can ride up that climb.
Well,
it's like hitting a wall.
Anybody can ride up it as long as you've got a triple chainring, because it really is a nasty piece of work, the Côte de la Redoute. It's only 2 kilometers in length. It's an average gradient of 7.4%, but there's a couple of sections of it really kick up to 18%, and you can see riders really gasping for breath. And that's why the majority of the spectators here rush down to see the Côte de la Redoute, because it really is the start of the finale of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. In fact, something you would never see, I don't think, in anywhere else in the world, is the motorway goes alongside the Côte de la Redoute and it gets changed into a parking lot.
It does indeed. So Phonak still have a lot of confidence here in Tyler Hamilton. They're assuming the role of the race leaders, even though it's of course a single-day race. Hamilton the winner last year, and they're just keeping nicely in control. I think that was Martin Elmiger on the front for Phonak. They've not got many riders of the team left with them right now. The workers have done their job and tailed off the back. Bram Tankink sat here at the back at the 50 kilometers to go point. One of the survivors now of the original 5-man breakaway, as was Strauss. It looks as though they're taking a back seat and leaving the fresher legs of the other 3 now to do a lot of the work, and there's a bit of team tactical work starting in that group. Looks as though Arvidsson tried to take them off the back there.
Well, they really need to work in a cohesive unit if they want to survive to the next big climb of the day, the Côte de la Redoute. It's no good at this stage of the game, and this 18-kilometer section between the 2 climbs to mess around in tactical manoeuvring like that. They need to get together, consolidate on their advantage, and start the Côte de la Redoute as one strong unit. And then I would say they've got a serious chance of surviving. Just looking down there, I caught a quick glimpse of number 18, and that was nice to see. Eric Zabel still at the front end of the peloton, and there just a little bit further in front is the jersey of the leader of the World Cup, his teammate Stefan Weissermann. Really sticking very much close together, looking for a little bit of shelter from the cold as we go over the highest spots of the Liège-Bastogne-Liège race here. We've been up around 400, 450 meters over the last few hours of racing, and it certainly hasn't been a flat ride to get there. But I would say, looking at that main field, Phil, although it is a large group, it's certainly been reduced in numbers over the last couple of climbs.
Yep, the 1 or 2 being dropped off the back. But the big teams of the season are running always near the front. Rabobank is currently the best team in the world, and not too far behind is Team CSC, and they've got 2 men up in that leading group now. And T-Mobile, despite the non-appearance yet of Jan Ulrich, is ranked 3 in the world. US Postal, by the way, number 6, and you may have seen the announcements this weekend that US Postal are to end their sponsorship of the team, which I think in many ways was expected, because the company itself is coming for a lot of bad publicity with losses and staff redundancies, and they can't really justify sponsoring a cycling team, I guess. But I can't imagine it will be difficult to replace them.
I doubt if it will. I think the big question will arise as to whether or not the new team structure, whatever it is, includes Lance Armstrong or not. And I think that's the most important thing that we need to know. And nobody knows yet whether or not Lance Armstrong will race for another season. But I think that's one thing that will be on the top of any prospective sponsors' question list. Will Lance Armstrong race again? And that's when we might see them possibly bring on board a very big multinational. But I don't think that the US Postal Service can deny the fact that over the years they've got a serious amount of good publicity in Europe from the cycling team that they've sponsored. And with 5 victories in the Tour de France and a first time ever for an American to win the Tour 5 times, I think they'll walk away with a happy memory from this sponsorship. But as with all sponsorships, one day or another it does have to come to an end.
Of course, and Motorola did, I think it was 7 years before they dropped out, putting the money into the Olympics in Atlanta at the time in '96. Well, I think it probably cost 10 times more than they put in the team, and I think I wouldn't have bet for one moment they got 10 times the return.
I certainly don't think so, but anyway, as we look down on the main field here, they're still hovering at that very similar margin of 1 minute and 15 seconds. 47 kilometers to go at the small town of Denier, and they're now setting themselves up for the big assault on the next big climb of the day, the very important one in my eyes, the Côte de la Redoute.
So we're looking at the peloton here now as they continue now the chase down. There were 5 riders in the lead, remember, almost from the start today after 60 kilometers. Moments ago we had a switch, 3 riders dropped out, 3 riders came up in the form of Jörg Jatzky, Kurt Attler Arvidsson, both from CSC, Alexander Botcherov, who now rides for Crédit Agricole. He joined the survivors of the breakaway, Bram Tankink and Marcel Strauss. But the field are closing in, and the net should come right down as they race into the town of Remechon, which will take us into the last 38 kilometers of the day. And just around the corner from Remechon is the climb of La Redoute.
I've always regarded the Côte de la Redoute as being the real major strategic point of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It's the beginning of the end, if you like. It comes well into the event at around about 223 kilometers covered, 35 kilometers to go, and all of the riders, all of the big contenders know when they get to this point they really have to hit the Côte de la Redoute in the first 10 places. But I am absolutely amazed at the performance here by the man in second position there, wearing number 74, Jörg Jats. He had a week ago, just before the start of the Amstel Gold Race, a really crazy accident while he was out training with one of his teammates, or one of his friends I should say. He fell on the ground and fractured his elbow, and here he is a week later actually at the front end of the bike race, and certainly not looking any worse for wear.
No, there'll be a big test though on Côte de la Redoute. Haute-Regard is where we are here just at this moment, which leaves us 43 kilometers to race, but as you saw there, just about 8 kilometers from the climb of La Redoute, and then that will rise up and slap them in the face. A massive crowd, as always, awaits them there. News of the Americans, Tyler Hamilton is very much still in this race, about 1.25 minutes behind. As far as we know, so too is Levi Leipheimer and Floyd Landerson in that chase group. Remember that Floyd Landerson looking for a team now with the announcement this weekend that Lance Armstrong's US Postal Boys will be no more at the end of this season, but I'm quite sure there will be some team to follow it all up.
Well, I think they will probably find a new sponsor. In fact, the current secondary sponsor, Berry Floors, has expressed a serious interest in taking over the whole team, lock, stock and barrel. So much have they been pleased with the publicity they've got from the team. And Floyd Landis, and you can actually see Floyd in around about 7th position there, very close to the front end of the main field. I would think would certainly like to stay alongside Lance Armstrong and keep the same team structure in place, because it's a team structure that over the last couple of years has gone on from strength to strength, from the team of 1999, where we saw them defend Lance Armstrong in his first victory at the Tour de France, has become a team that is capable of being competitive all throughout the season in the one-day classics, in small races like the Tour of Georgia that they're riding at the moment and dominating, and of course races like the Tour de France. I think it's a team that needs to stay around for a few more years. The structure is in place, it's a well-organised team, and I think it would be sad if they were to fall apart.
I don't think that'll happen personally, as we now see Rabobank here drive on. Eric Decker's at the front up here as well, also riding well. 193 took the start today, and the only notable one who didn't, unfortunately, was Danilo De Luca, who showed us a fine stretch of his form in Flèche Wallonne a few days ago, but has developed cystitis overnight. That's rather a painful inflammation of the bladder, and as a result of that was unable to start today.
It's a shame, because I thought he was in pretty good form after finishing second in the Flèche Wallonne. You can see one of the outsiders who I thought was in with a good chance of getting a victory here in Liège-Bastogne-Liège is riding up in 4th position there, Michael Bogart. He too was second in the Amstel Gold Race just a week ago, right behind David Rebellin. As you can see, the leading group of 5 riders, the man on the front is Kurt Attler Arvidsson from Team CSC, second place there in number 74. Is the man who this year won the Tour of the Mediterranean and Paris-Nice. That's Jörg Jats in the group as well. Alexander Botcherov has looked very aggressive and impressive, I should say, on the early climbs of the day. And I think these guys are certainly going to have to keep a very close eye on him when we go up the Côte de la Redoute in around about 6 kilometers time. The 2 men on the back in the light blue jersey is Marcel Strauss of Gerolsteiner and Bram Tankink of Quick-Step Davitamon. Those 2 men were in the early morning breakaway, and they've actually been at the front of the race now for around about 140 kilometers.
Yeah, and paying the price, I think. But let's hope they stay away a bit longer. But there's no way they'll get over the climb of La Redoute, I don't think. 43 kilometres, about 26.5 miles to race. The gap has stayed lock solid up to 1:15. They're both travelling front and back at exactly the same speed. No gains at the moment. They're waiting to pounce. They're waiting for the sight of La Redoute and the massive crowd who by tradition will be standing on those slopes. Goodness knows why, because you can't see much and you're about 7 deep. But they'll get a good feel of the atmosphere as all of this peloton begins the real assault on this race.
Well, I haven't seen Tyler Hamilton near the front end of the main field, but I'm almost certain that he should be not too far away, because his teammates have done an awful lot of work to make sure that the gap of that leading group of 5 hasn't gone to astronomical proportions. I've also seen regularly fairly close to the front end the Italian national champion Paolo Bettini, and that orange line of jerseys there is trying to lead out Michael Boga. These riders now know how important it is to get to the foot of La Redoute in an ideal position. There, a little bit further down to the right-hand side as well, you can just see the dark blue jersey of Floyd Landis, who this year I think has changed slightly as a professional bike rider, Phil. He's riding with an awful lot more confidence, and we've talked about him so much in these last few classics at the front end of the race.
Superb riding, got good form. Look forward to a big result for Floyd this year at some stage. Sorry about the picture not behaving itself just for the moment. We're heading down towards Remechon now with the peloton. Briefly out of the hills, across the main road and back into them we go. And a 1:14, 1:15, still a spread. Not a problem whatsoever here.
Mark Lotz on the front here. He's trying to whip up the pace for his men, and they're in 4th position. You can just see keeping himself topped up with energy there is Michael Bogert. Team Saeco a little bit weakened by the fact that Danilo De Luca didn't start here this morning. And look on the right-hand side there, Stefano Garzelli's Vinny Calderola team. He's actually coming in off a very fine, solid start to the season. A lot of the Italians now are looking for the win here as they head up in 2 weeks' time for their major stage race, the Giro d'Italia.
Here comes a little scurry from Lamprey now on the right of the screen. They just signed the world champion from Cofidis, Igor Astaloa, so he'll be around possibly in the Tour of Italy, which is not too far away from getting to the start line right now. Lamprey boosted a little bit by getting a win in the week with Jan Zerada, their sprinter, so a bit of a slow start for Lamprey this year, but maybe things are beginning to swing a little bit now for them.
That little ridge you can just see in the distance, that is the ridge which holds and hosts the very difficult climb of the Côte de la Redoute. These riders still on the descent into Remouchon, pick their way across and across the little river in the bottom alongside the motorway, and a couple of little left and right turns as they will find themselves all of a sudden with this incredible mountain straight up in front of them as they go down here at 68, 69 kilometers an hour. That's not far off 45 miles an hour they're doing.
Good roads. Wonderful conditions, as you can see. Late spring, trees have really burst now. Hardly any wind to talk of whatsoever. This could be the day summer came to Europe and might be gone tomorrow. You can never tell, but it's certainly a wonderful day today. And it's a long descent now as we wind our way down into Remechon, then we flick left and over the town. I know a very nice hotel in Remechon, Paul, and it really is a nice hotel where the landlord loves bike riders. It's a good base, by the way, Remechon, if you want to go touring here in this area of the Belgian Ardennes.
I think I'll stick to riding in Belgium and Holland for the moment, because this is just a little bit too hilly for me. It's a very difficult area to ride through, and there's hardly any sections of flat. And I don't think there's any flat left in this race now for the riders as they head down towards the finishing line in Anse, which is around about 5 kilometers outside the very heart of the great old town of Liège. This is the back end of the main field, and they too are clipping down this descent here at around about 50 miles an hour.
Yes, they're just timing their catch, if they can indeed catch. We don't know what secrets the 2 CSC boy riders hold in those legs. They've come up to what was an original 5-man break, got rid of 3 of them straight away. 2 have survived. But we don't know what strength they've got left to unleash on the La Redoute, and they've got to unleash it there. They can't hold anything back whatsoever. As the chase go down, looks as though the faster boys are trying to think of Frank Van den Broek. If Van den Broek's going to go, he'll go on La Redoute.
But when he won the race, in fact, he was so dominant, he actually attacked on the slopes of the Côte de la Redoute and got himself a lone advantage. Then all of a sudden he seemed to sit up and think, oh, this is a bit crazy. I've still got 20 miles to go to the finish. So I actually sat up and waited for the group to catch him. and then attacked just a little bit later. There's the left-hand turn, followed by the right-hand turn, as they will now ride alongside the little river here, over the cobblestone section, right in the very heart of Remouchon. The next corner will take them is a slightly right-hand one, as then all of a sudden they will open out into the fields outside of Remouchon, and there in front of them will be the Côte de la Redoute, 1.9 kilometers in length, about 18% of the steepest part. And I tell you, if you've ridden already, as these men have, for around about 5.5 hours, ouch, it hurts.
It does. Just down this street here, they used to have a criterium here a few years ago. I don't know if they still do, but it was a very entertaining part of the evening on a Saturday night before you popped off to watch Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Now these boys will see a right turn at the end. They'll go under a bridge, and then the road will start to climb. And we look back over the years, it's been decisive for many big names: Moreno Argentin, Claude Quillian, Stephen Roach, Sean Kelly, all of the big names, Eddie Merckx, all made the moves on La Redoute over years gone by. But right now this is more an attempt to consolidate rather than a move away from the breakaway. But the peloton, the big boys, have got to stay at the front, because halfway up this road becomes quite narrow, and it could well split the field, and you could be left with a long chase to catch up with the men who are pushing the pace, and that could cost you.
See, they've really stretched it out now, and that's because of the pressure on the front of the teammates of all of the leaders in this bike race. They're making the right-hand turn away from the river, the Ambleuve, and then they're waiting now in around about a kilometre. The skies will start to kick up right in front of them, and they will probably get a chance to see or hear where the position of the breakaway is, because there's a massive crowd here on the slopes of the La Redoute. As that time gap has started to come down for the first time, it's just come inside of the 1 minute mark to 58 seconds, which indicates that the front end of the peloton, they're taking this race now very seriously.
Well, it's an in-battle now to claim a place at the front if you've got the strength, because from the front is where you must make your attack. And it's Fassa Bortolo. They've got a number of candidates for likely victory, apart from Frank van den Broeke, who was the last Belgian winner of this race in 1999. And Belgian riders have won 58 times in Liège. So they're due for a win, because they've lost their grip on it this last decade or so. Here we are, lower slopes. Somebody's already gone. It is in fact Marcel Strauss, who has been dropped as we start the climb of the Côte de la Redoute. And it is Jörg Jatzky, surprisingly to us all, with his cracked elbow, who's setting the pace.
You've got a quick glimpse of the profile there. It actually kicks up to 19% right towards the summit. It's almost 2 kilometers in length. They've obviously got rid of the man who was in that early morning breakaway, Marcel Strauss, and I would expect the next man to disappear from this leading group will be Brand Tanking, who's just on the back there for the Quick-Step Davitamon team in the blue and grey jersey. It's amazing to see Jörg Jatz at the front end of the bike race, having had that rather interesting injury a week ago when he fell off in a training incident and fractured his elbow. But these riders are slowly but surely getting themselves to the start of the Côte de la Redoute, and all of the leaders now are in the position that they want to be, because the difficult thing about the Côte de la Redoute is if you're not in the first 15 or 20 places, you really have nowhere to move to get yourself to the front end of the field.
On the left there, the motorway, which has become the car park Paul mentioned earlier. Police seem to have it well organised now. I see they've got diagonal parking on the motorway this year, but there are massive cars parked there. They must close that motorway down for a short period of time, as the peloton now wait for somebody to make a move. This is not the steep section. We've still got another kink left first of all, and then it hits you.
These are the men gasping for breath at the back end of the field, and you can get an indication of just how difficult this climb is. Many riders already, before we really start to kick up, are in serious difficulty. Just on the right-hand side there is Stefano Garzelli. In the middle, you can see Michael Bogard in the orange and white jersey of Team Rabobank. And every now and again, there's Tyler Hamilton on the left-hand side as well for Team Phonak. So he's feeling fairly confident, and he is right on the shoulder of David Rebellin, the winner of the Flèche Wallonne, and of course a week ago of the Amstel Gold Race.
He's the big watch. Everybody's looking for him to make a move today, I would think. Garzelli would also like to test him. It's a kilometre to go for the leaders. In the distance you can see the peloton, but they've climbed this very, very well indeed. But now there's a little bit of a warming up of the pace here, and this was to be expected. But I don't think we're going to see Garzelli too far away from the action as we come up towards the summit. There's the USA flag.
There's Garzelli in third position there, looking very comfortable, just waiting to see if there's any reactions, and he will cover them as quickly as possible. Good to see Tyler Hamilton, and look, there is the leader of the World Cup. I recognise him from his helmet there.
Yeah.
It's Stefan Weissermann, who's right at the front on La Redoute.
Well, surprisingly, as with last year, people are so tense when they get to this climb, and it's not that persuasive at all as they continue to keep just tempo up the last kilometre. Last 500 metres they tend to try and break. Botcherov trying to go clear at the summit now. This is on his favourite terrain. The short and steep climbs suit him down to the ground.
Well, Botcherov is looking over his shoulder to see what the situation is with the men behind him. Here's the champion of Italy now, Paolo Bettini. He looks so comfortable. This man is quite remarkable because not only can he go up hills like this very fast, but he's also got a very good turn of speed when it comes down to sprinting towards the end. Right on his tail there. Look at the grimace on the face there of Stefano Garzelli.
Decker there in 4th place, also hanging on and keeping in touch. There, look, Garzelli looks very cool at the moment, and he's got signs of good form arriving just in time for his crack at the Tour of Italy. Michael Bogart, sorry, he was down there in 4th place.
Frank Vandenbroek in 5th place, Tyler Hamilton in 6th place, but this is still a very large group, but the best place to be is at the front end. They're pulling back here Marcel Strauss, and he's crying out for pain and mercy here, and he won't get it from these guys as they look across and say, well done, see you later.
Well, he might just hang on to the tail of this lot if he's lucky as we get onto the leveler road. There's not too much damage being done there. Botcherov has decided to scurry away and try and go for gold here. He's going to give it his best shot. He knows that they're catching. Now, it might be an idea. Sometimes, you know, you'll pick up the others and they won't realise there's still one man away. There's the flag for Kurt Atla Arvidsson, the Norway flag. And it looks as though Botcherov is going to be first over the top of La Redoute.
Big sounds there, big flags for VDB. Frank Vandenbroek, there he is on the right-hand side. And here's the acceleration coming from Paolo Bettini, quickly marked there by Michael Bogart on the left-hand side.
He's a remarkable rider, Bogart. Made a big mess, in my opinion, of the Amstel Gold Race. He led out far too early and race. Now he's really going to stretch them this time. There's a big effort from Bogart. Bettini right up to it. The two boys from Calderola. They've been split. Vandenbroek's done okay. I think only Garzelli's left in the hunt there.
In fact, it's Garzelli's teammate who's dropped down into 3rd. Garzelli himself has slipped down into 8th or 9th.
I saw his face, actually. He was looking very pained. He couldn't really take it up into the red zone.
He certainly couldn't, but now I don't think this La Redoute this afternoon has made that much of a difference, but what it did indicate was just how good Michael Bogart is on the right-hand side. He looked very easy, and there's Peter van Petegem. Yeah. He's a man still looking for a win this season after a very disappointing Tour of Flanders and, of course, Paris-Roubaix, where he crossed the line hand in hand with Johan Museo on his road to retirement. This man, I have to say, is a very talented bike rider.
Yes, and this most certainly is not his favourite race. He was 7th in it back in 2002. So he can do a good ride in this, but it's not one we expect to see him. But he feels he's actually riding as well as last year when he won the 2 big classics, Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. It's just that luck hasn't gone his way on this occasion. But he says his form's equal to it, and he's showing it now. It might well be so, because that's a nice group that's starting to move away now.
Well, he rode an absolutely marvellous Paris-Roubaix. In fact, despite the fact that he had the punctures at the wrong time in the race, he really got himself to the front when it needed to. And after that very badly timed flat tyre, he was able to ride himself almost back to the front end of the event, which indicates that his form is on the top of it. Quick-Step Davitamon now have decided they've got a good break situation. They've reduced the number of riders in that break, and they want to make sure that they've got themselves the advantage. And the advantage in this instance would be having a lot of riders in a group of around about 25 men strong. But Alexander Botcherov, I'm not sure that this is the ideal tactic to try and ride on his own to the finish, because at the summit of Côte de la Redoute, there are 35 kilometres to go to the finish line. And it's a tall order for this man who is better known as a climber rather than a time trialist. I think he needs to have a look round and see what the position is of the two chasers, because they seem to be very strong in the group. And here they are, Arvidsson in 1st position there, and just on his tail you've got a quick glimpse of York Yachts, but the main field's right behind them.
Yes, and it's not really the main field just at the moment. It's about 20 riders at the most here trying to get across, and that could be the start of the move. There's the full quantity. It might be slightly more than 20 riders, but it's a very strong group. But what we'd like to know now is, did Levi Leipheimer, Floyd Landis and Tyler Hamilton make the selection down there?
Well, Tyler Hamilton was right in the ideal position once the aggression started. He wasn't too far away from the front end of the peloton, but through these trees it's difficult to get down and have a look. Here's Botcherov just being joined by the two chasers, but they've not got very much more than 10 or 15 seconds over the main field, or what is the remnants of the main field, made up of around about 25 riders strong.
Could be a good chance because the Côte de Sprimont is not such a challenge as La Redoute, and they might get a bit of a regrouping here before we get on to the Côte de Sartillemont.
Yeah, I've always wondered why they call that Côte de Sprimont a climb, really, because it's just a little kick up on the main road after you've been over the Côte de la Redoute.
Yeah.
Although it does make the legs sting. The next real important strategic point is that Côte de Sartillemont. It's around about 3 kilometres in length, and it's an ideal climb to attack on if you've got the power in the legs.
Here comes the catch for the 3 leaders then.
There's Floyd Landis.
Floyd is there. Second wheel just now.
And also in about 5th position, you can just see through the trees. It's very difficult from this altitude, but Tyler Hamilton is there as well. So 2 Americans have certainly made the front end of the split, and we're looking now for the orange jersey of Team Rabobank to see if Levi Leipheimer has made it as well.
I think you might just be tagged into the side of our picture. We've got 15 riders in our picture, but I think there are more just off the shot. It's around 25 riders have got the pace here, and that's a very nice group to start making final decisions from further down. But of course, we need to pull back and just see. We might get an idea around this bend as to whether anybody else is getting across.
Well, it's a good, manageable group. There's a couple of riders on the back there for Euskaltel-Euskadi. In fact, the front end of the main field is also starting to integrate.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see a general regrouping here as this is the back end of the group, and riders scrambling to try and stay in contention. And I think if they don't really hammer it along the road towards the climb of the Côte de Sprimont, we'll see a number of riders start to reintegrate this group, and there'll be a swelling before we get down to the Côte de Sartillemont.
That looks like the pedaling style of Levi Leipheimer down there, so I think all 3 Americans have made this selection, which is excellent news. Bettini certainly has, just checking over his shoulder, looking for the jersey of the World Cup holder. Haven't spotted it yet, but I'd be surprised in a group this size if Steph Wisserman hasn't made it. We haven't seen anything of Oscar Freire, have we? Only indeed David Rebellin just now.
Well, Rebellin was pretty much to the front of the group once the climb started, but I didn't see him once they went over the summit. It's a bit difficult from this altitude to see, but there you can definitely identify Floyd Landis in 3rd place. Looking further down, the Crédit Agricole rider there was Botcherov, and this is the back end of the main field.
Yeah, life at the back as we see it at the moment.
Rubens Bertogliati was having a little bit of a hard time there, trying to stay in contact, as well as Thierry Maréchal here, just on the back end, number 24 for Lotto Domo.
And you see all the time, the riders are probably going to nip onto the tail of this because it's we've had the first flurry of attacks, but those with the legs will get back this time, but they'll be hit again very shortly, that's for sure.
They're on the main road now, heading up towards Liège, and the difficult thing is the race organisation over the last couple of years have decided that it was too easy on the road to the finish, so instead of carrying on up the Côte de Forges, they in fact turn the riders left off here, and they head down to the Côte de Sartillemont. And that looks to me as if that group has in fact swelled quite considerably in numbers. It was down to 25 strong men, but a few men have managed to put the grappling ropes onto the back end of the group and pull themselves into the race again.
A few deep breaths, and then they need to move up to near the front of the race if they can. There's the turn off the road. And you can hear the car horns blowing because these boys are moving right now. And if you look down the bottom of your picture, you'll see that I think the whole of the peloton is latched on now.
Well, you can see that was this is the Côte de Sartillemont. It's 1.3 kilometres in length, kicks up at 9%, and you can see the man on the front there has been brought back into the fold, and the acceleration immediately coming from Team CSC. And again, that work is being done by Jorg Yats on the front there with a bandaged elbow, and on his wheel, Floyd Landis. A little bit further back, the man that made an incredible turn of speed there is Patrick Skinnerfigic from Germany, a young rider on the Quick-Step Davitamon team, who I don't think we've ever mentioned before.
No, I'm seeing him now though. Côte de Sprimont on this, 29 kilometres to go once we cross over the top.
It's Andreas Kloden on the left-hand side as well, a man we're expecting to see put a fine performance in over the next couple of seasons. And there's Paolo Bettini on the left-hand side. And there's Stefan Weissermann, their leader of the World Cup. So it's good to see Stefan in there. He's a great bike rider, very popular not only with the bike riders in the circuit, but also with the journalists as well. And quite interesting to listen to him talk, because just like Jens Voigt, he speaks English with a very Australian accent, spending most of his winters there.
Yep, he loves Australia and speaks the language very well. Now we're looking here at the peloton, which is now the whole field. It's a little respite. The Col de la Redoute again has not been decisive in any manner or means. Too many right men got into that front split, so they're all unwilling to continue the attack. And it's come back together again as we're on the almost at the top here, probably are at the top of the Côte de Sprimont, and that'll leave us 29 kilometres still to go.
Well, I think Andreas Kloden on the front there has been told to sacrifice his race here this afternoon for Stefan Veeseman. There's number 1, Tyler Hamilton, last year's winner, looking very comfortable. Michael Bogard is in there as well. He too looks pretty good.
Yes, Oscar Freire was there too, which is something of a surprise.
Well, he'd be looking to put in a fine performance, because if he can get himself into the top 5 or 10, he could be the new leader of the World Cup at the end of today. The top 5 and 6 riders are very close together in the overall classification. We get a chance to see Andreas Kloden. A few years ago, this man was tipped for the top after he won the very difficult Paris-Nice. And since then, he's swum around for several seasons. But in this last couple of weeks, he started to show his name quite a lot at the front end of the bike races.
Steve Zampieri just tagged onto the tail there as we watch Andreas Kloden. And that's Botcherov. Looks to me as though he's launching another attack here.
It is Botcherov, and really interesting to see him attacking like this. He was pulled back in over the summit of the Côte de la Redoute. This is not the ideal place. I think he was in fact there just accelerating to get himself some points, because there's a competition here in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which is a bit strange in a World Cup race, but there is actually a King of the Mountains classification in this World Cup event, and it's worth quite a few pennies in your back pocket at the end of the day.
So Botcherov's got the points. Whether he's got the Euros, we'll have to wait and see when they tell us the result, but he certainly was. That's exactly what he was doing, because he's waited for the field now. And Tyler Hamilton having a drink, checking out the opposition. I think, crikey, half the field's still here when he looks over his shoulder. And there goes an attack now. And that wasn't Tyler Hamilton, I don't think. It looked like Pereiro.
Yep,
yes, definitely. Yeah, the way he's riding there with his crunch shoulders. That's a counter-attack by Pereiro. And I'm wondering if he took a signal there from Tyler, because he launched the attack as soon as Tyler looked round.
I think he could have done. He maybe were trying to set something up. This man also rode a very solid Paris-Nice in the month of March, and I think he's got the form here to really put the cat amongst the pigeons in a move like this. And he's, I think, trying to take the pressure off the shoulders of his teammate. He was very quickly joined there by Laurent Dufaux of Quick Step d'Avitement, a man who was possibly riding in his last season as a professional cyclist.
And this man who's come up is a familiar face to us all. I thought I caught a glimpse of his nose in the camera. It is Vinokourov, the opportunist who looks for the moves in the closing kilometres of every race he rides. So often it's successful for him. Now he's got 6 riders together, including Landis. 7, 8, 9, 10 riders forming now at the front. This is the next move. They must pay attention, and it's caused a little bit of disarray back in the main field, because we are now running into the last 25 kilometres of the race.
Floyd Landis very attentive, a little bit isolated though as he looks over his shoulder. He doesn't have very many.
A little bit, I think he's totally isolated.
Well, I haven't seen any other US Postal Service riders in this race for the last couple of kilometres. Let's not forget at the moment the team is cut in half, because the majority of the big names are actually over on the other side of the pond riding in the Tour de Georgia, which they are leading very admirably with Lance Armstrong, and not too far away with a great ride over the last couple of days, Yaroslav Ekimov moving up to 5th place in the overall classification. Almost 40 years of age and still got the enthusiasm to race at the top level of the sport.
A remarkable rider indeed, as these riders continue now to push on and serve as best they can, but they're still having to work a little bit hard here. That's Manuel Beltran, so I apologise, he has got a bit of help there. Beltran's also up here.
Beltran's a good bike rider. He's a man who could look after Floyd in the last few kilometres of a race like this. So it's not surprising to see him riding up to the front. I think he was a great addition to the team halfway through the season, and certainly Lance counted on him an awful lot throughout the month of July in the Tour de France, and I think he's going to be very happy to have him alongside him this year when he goes to try and make it 6 in a row.
Well, the scurry of attacks. Very nervous race again at the moment, as we're seeing a huge peloton head towards the line, including the champion of Germany, Eric Zabel. I'm not quite sure what that tells us, because you wouldn't expect to see Eric here just at this minute in time. Not if it's a hard race, and Unai Echeverria tagged on there just behind. So it's a nice looking move here for Eric. I don't think he'll be in the sprint, because I don't think he can handle it that well. The FDJ rider in front there was Nicolas Fritsch. And again, it's turn off the gas, assess what's happening. A few drinks for the boys from Rabobank, and we're coming back to normal again.
Well, there's a lot of orange jerseys moving to the front end of the peloton too, and in fact The Euskaltel-Euskadi team was very successful last year. In fact, they put 2 men into the top 6 places, with Iban Mayo getting himself second and Sammy Sanchez with a great performance crossing the line in 6th. Now, Lotto Doma are trying to set something up here, and this is a fine acceleration from them as they throw caution to the wind at a long way out from the finish line. This looks very much like it's Serge Baguet, a man who actually retired from the sport a couple of years ago, got himself a job as a roof tile, and then said, well, this is too hard, I think I'll come back to cycling. And there's Levi Leipheimer.
Yes, Levi's here, and watch out for the arrival of Axel Merckx. It was somewhere around here where he went away hoping to win the race last year, and everybody blamed Lance Armstrong for chasing him down.
Well, a little bit of caution coming back into these riders as they go now through the town of Dol-en-Breux. And there's certainly been a swelling in the number of riders at the back end. It's good to see that Eric Zabel was able to reintegrate the group, but I think he'll have a hard time when they come to the top of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. The next climb they're setting themselves up for is the Côte de Sartillemont, while there's a bit of action at the rear end of the peloton. This is Ruslan Ivanov of Alessio, not the strong Alessio team here. I think they've rested 1 or 2 riders, Phil, as they go out towards the big classics and the Giro d'Italia.
So while they get service at the back, we'll turn to the front, and again they're still attacking. Looks like we might have Rabobank there keeping a close eye on affairs now, making the right-hand corner. Now Lotto will fancy the chances once more. They almost pulled it off last year with Axel Merckx, who was devastated when it didn't work out for him, but it looks as though we're going to be onto a similar sort of finish here. The Sartillemont just under 7 kilometres from the riders at the moment, and that very definitely could be the springboard which will take us on to the final climb, uncharted waters after the Saint Nicolas, up to the finish.
Well, Axel Merckx had already taken off at this point last year, and then Lance Armstrong took off in hot pursuit, and Lance got himself a serious tongue lashing from Eddie Merckx, Axel's father, the next day in the press, saying that the only reason that Lance chased him down was because it was Axel Merckx and he was his former teammate. But that night, Axel and Lance got together on the telephone, and Lance said, well, look, I'm sorry, I know you're my buddy, but at the end of the day, I was trying to win the bike race, and I think they're still pretty good friends even after that.
No, I'm sure. And Eddie and Lance are very good friends as well. 2 boys from US Postal riding out the last season in those colours, don't forget, because over the weekend, US Postal has said they will not sponsor the team after this year, and so they're up for sale, although I think very much they're not really. I think there'll be a new sponsor announced pretty soon, as we see the 2 leaders now on that squad right at the front of the race, Beltran and Floyd Landis.
Floyd has been very concentrated over these last few days in the classics. Flèche Wallonne, we saw him right at the front end of the peloton on a number of occasions, involved in a pretty nasty crash going through a feeding station, although it was an unofficial feeding station. And of course, Beltran has also been riding fairly well over the last months, and I think we'll be looking to a solid performance by either of those riders as we head down towards the next 3 big climbs of the day. This next one that they'll start in a couple of kilometres, the Côte de Sartillemont, is a real nasty climb. And in the past, we've seen some serious accelerations from riders like Paolo Bettini and, of course, Michele Bartoli. And that must be what is going through everybody's mind right now. The race is on, and any acceleration, any breakaway right now could be the winning move.
Well, these last few years, we have seen this sight of a big peloton heading towards Liège. It is a very difficult finish. Only strong men will survive at the front, but it's anybody's race just now, as they still send riders to keep the pace high. We haven't seen the real big names put in one serious attack. Men like Bettini or Rebellin or Bogart, or indeed Bartoli, they're still waiting in the pack.
You have to be very patient in a race like Liège-Bastogne-Liège. You've only got a couple of occasions when you can go out and really launch a vicious attack. Different kinds of riders will wait for certain times to try and launch the attack, but the final climb right now has proved over the last couple of years to be the ideal place to launch the attack. The Côte de Saint-Nicolas is a real steep climb, and it's ideally situated at around about 5 kilometres to go to the finish. If you can go over the summit of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas with a 30 to 45 second advantage, you've got a real serious chance of winning the race, but it needs to be an explosive effort on that climb, which comes at 244 kilometres into the race.
Oh, and somebody's punctured there at a very inopportune moment. It was one of the Brioche yeah. But it's just had a tyre puncture, and he had no choice there but to stop where he could.
Well, halfway around a corner like that, the only thing you can do is just pull it up as quickly as possible. but that is certainly not going to affect the front end of the bike race. They're still dropping away from the big plateau which surrounds Liège onto the main road, into the small town at the bottom of the climb here of the Côte de Sartillemont, and that little town is called Tilf. And once they get into Tilf, they will take a left-hand turn, and then the climb will start in earnest.
And Tilf is where they start the randonnée, the tourist ride around the course. It's actually Tilf-Bastogne-Tilch rather than Liège-Bastogne-Liège. But I'm not absolutely certain whether they still do start it here. But here comes the big race, heading towards Liège at quite a speed, with Beltran driving at the front.
Tête de la course, the front end of the bike race, they're still dropping down into the outskirts of Tilf, and these riders are starting to feel quite nervous now as we go inside of 21 kilometers to go. Just looking over the shoulders there to see how long the stretch is in the main field. But all of the main contenders are still in the bike race, and nobody yet, as far as we know, has had to pull themselves out of the event as we look here towards the rear end of the peloton.
They're still cruising back there. Another attack going from Alessio just now, as they start now to try and shake something out of this race. I think this looks like Ellis Rastelli. Short, compact man, goes big thighs pumping away, waiting to see who's coming out to play.
Euskaltel-Euskadi very attentive on the front end of the peloton. They too are starting to pick up the pacemaking, and everybody right now wants to get themselves to the bottom of the Côte de Sartillemont in the ideal position, because I have a funny feeling, I can feel the nervousness starting to build in this main field as everyone gets themselves into the position towards the last 12.5 miles of racing. And in the last 12.5 miles there are 3 very difficult climbs to come.
This is the leader from, it is certainly an Alessio rider. I'm not too sure who it is. Is it Christian Moreni?
Could be Christian Moreni. He's a big, strong, powerful bike rider. He's been at the front over the last couple of days in many of the bike races here around
Moreni.
Europe. A former winner of the pink jersey, wearer of the pink jersey at the Giro d'Italia. There's Michael Bogert, looking very nervous indeed. He's asking his teammates, in fact, he must have had a problem because he's on a different bike there, Phil. That's not his machine, which he's swapped across to, and he's got a teammate pacing him back.
Well, they're behind at the moment, so whatever's happened just coming down that hill. Must have been a flat tyre for him or something else. This is Moreni out front. Here they all come to bring him back.
I think that was an attack for publicity more than anything else, because I think he really scoffed a little bit too much wind into his face and decided, I think I'll wait for the rest of the boys and get to the bottom of the Côte de Sartillemont in a little bit more comfort. CSC now getting themselves the big organisation. There's Nicky Sorensen, the champion of Denmark. Ivan Basso seems to be the man on form with this squad this afternoon, and it may well be that they're trying to set up the victory for him. There is the river, just done it in the outskirts of Tilf, and once they get into the heart of this town, they've got a left-hand bend, and they will then start to climb up towards the summit of the plateau which surrounds Liège once again, and then eventually they'll get a chance to see the Meuse on the horizon.
CSC getting a grip at the front of this race as well, because Sorensen there in the championship of Denmark's jersey, he's also CSC. And they are just about ready to launch an assault by the next climb by the look of it. So somebody on their team has said they're feeling pretty good. It's a nice compact peloton, but it's got to be 45 riders at least still left in this race with a chance of victory as we race now through the streets of Tilf. And this rider here setting the pace is Arvidsson again. He's had a great day out. He's worked very hard for the squad today, but it's quite clear now that Michele Bartoli must have passed some indication on he's feeling like he can finish this race off today. Can't believe it's Jorgiatski.
Well, I don't think they'll be working for Jorgiatski. I think he went out on the attack early just to really toughen the race up for his leaders, Ivan Basso and Michele Bartoli. There you can see the front end of the race now starting to cross this little river in the very heart of Tilf. Once they've crossed that, they will begin this very difficult climb of the Côte de Sartillemont. And I have no news coming across at the moment as to the position of Michael Bogert, who was looking very comfortable on the Côte de la Redoute, but he's just had a mechanical incident, and he really needs to make the contact here with the peloton before they start the climb.
Well, there's just a chance all will be well as we cross over the Ourthe to the other side, sharp left. And still, even Lamprey are beginning to get in on the act now.
In fact, Michael Bogert, in fact, had a flat tyre there as he came into the outskirts of Tilf. but he was immediately given a spare wheel by one of his teammates, and he's, with a bit of luck, just getting onto the back end of the group. This is the Côte de Sartillemont, and you can see it really is a very difficult climb at 9%, with an average of 6.8%, and it's still a very large group of riders. I have a funny feeling that was Michael Bogert on the right-hand side there, moving to the front end of the pack in the orange and blue jersey of Rabobank. So that is an impressive move if he's done that.
He certainly came back with a vengeance. He's got great form, of course. Now, remember, if coincidences are to be believed, he was second in the Amstel Gold Race last year, finished third in this race. He's been second in the Amstel Gold Race this year already, and he's looking for better than third right now. He was very disappointed with that ride. This is one of his teammates, Mark Lotz, who brought him back and has now paid the price in full.
Well, I think the most important thing is just to try and get your teammate back into the race as quickly as possible, as we now see the damage that this climb is starting to do. Just also slipping off the back there, Sylvain Chavanel. A surprise to see him going out, because he's one of France's big hopes for the top of the sport.
Well, the Sartillemont, a little bit of a sort-out climb here, and it looks as though it's all going to sort out for Eric Zabel as well. Meanwhile, back at the front, another attack from Crédit Agricole, Kashakin, Anders Kashakin, who's the Kazakhstan rider on the team.
He had a very good Paris-Nice, which was the first time he really came to the top end of the international sport. But you see his attack there was immediately marked by riders from CSC. They want to try and keep this race as much together as possible. CSC, in fact, I think they've got a slight advantage here, and it looks as if that was a pretty vicious attack.
This is a good climb. It's a good road, and a few tentatives that we can expect on this climb to try and crack the field, but it looks like to be a vigilant lot today. Start to see one other rider slip away, and this is the leader of the FDJ climb. I'm a bit surprised to see him go, Philippe Gilbert, but he's gone.
Well, it's all slowly but surely pulling itself back together at the front end of the main field, Tête de la Course. The race actually starts to get that little bit grippier once they get into the forested area of this climb, because all of a sudden you take a right-hand bend, and these are the riders, I would presume, at the back who've done their work for the team, and they're starting to slip away. This is Frank Schleck, the Luxembourg rider, who finished, I think, around about 9th or 10th in Paris-Nice earlier on this season.
Well, they've done a fair bit of work up front. The same applies to Lotto, because we're now losing Rick Verbrugge, which I'm a little bit surprised at. Rick, you're never quite sure where Rick's going to finish in a bike race. He could be winning or he could be finishing last. He's a very inconsistent cyclist. But at the moment, it looks just like he's chosen the rear end of the field.
I think Quick-Step Davitimo decided who they're going to sort themselves out for. This is the right-hand bend, and the climb still goes on for another 1.5 kilometers or so, but Quick-Step Davitimo have got a very good control of the front end of the main field. You can see the orange jerseys of Euskaltel Euskadi moving forward. There's Georg Tocznik on the far side, the champion of Austria. And the champion of Italy, on the other hand, though, is moving into 5th position, looking very comfortable. I think he will probably wait, Phil, until the next climb of the day, but they're going to have to control these guys from Spain, because Euskaltel Euskadi are really going to try and rip this place to pieces.
Well, it'll be interesting to see this one, but my bet it'd be Samuel Sanchez who's having a dig there. He's the one rider who likes to do it at this stage of the race, see what happens. He's been well marked out of it by Quick-Step. Bettini's got his boys in control. He feels confident he can win this race. He's trying not to make a move yet, because I think there's so many riders in the peloton. An opportunity to escape is going to be very difficult right now.
Very difficult with the pace as high as it is. That little counter-attack there from Euskaltel Euskadi has been nailed back with some very serious accelerations coming from Quick-Step Davitimo, and all the time, every time I look at the front end of the main field, I keep seeing that dark blue jersey of Floyd Landis. There he is in around about 4th position, so he's very observant, staying where he needs to be. And again, Euskaltel, they want to really try and get a man off the front as we go inside of 20 kilometers to go.
Well, place your bets. I think it's Samuel Sanchez who's trying there to try and rip his way off the front of the field. Certainly got a good turn of speed, but the peloton are stretching, but they're not breaking. There's still an awful lot of riders down here. It's not that far to the top of the climb of the Sartillemont. Another couple of riders trying to break away on the far side there.
Everyone realizing this is a very good launch pad, but it's still just that little bit too far to try and go out on a lone escape towards the finishing line. And that acceleration pulled straight back into the fold immediately. And I think that acceleration came under the presence of the Gerolsteiner team. So obviously Their man David Rebellin is thinking about the possibility of making sure that he stays in contact. It's Landeluz, the Euskaltel-Euskadi rider, who's managed to get himself to the front end of the break, and he's looking for some help, and he won't get any help here from Quick-Step Davitamon, because the team orders for that team will be to look after this man who's going away in the counter-attack there in second position, Paolo Bettini. What a great bike rider to watch.
He's chosen to take the wheel of Nicky Sorensen here and see what comes of it, but everybody's quickly onto him. And it looks like Vinokurov up there in third place, and the whole field have jumped as soon as Bettini made the move. It's time to react. These are the two riders who got away and are holding at the moment. I think only Euskadel is doing the work, because the other guy's waiting for the return of life from the back with Sinkovic.
This is Patrick Sinkovic, and we said earlier in the race that we'd never spoken very much about this bike rider, but he's actually playing a very good defensive role for Quick-Step Davitamon here. He's a teammate of Paolo Bettini, the Italian national champion, a two-time winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and his team orders will be go with the moves, sit on the moves, but do not contribute in any way to the pacemaking, because our man Paolo Bettini is going to launch a vicious attack on the final climb of the day. But watch this counter-attack here. In second position, Floyd Landis is really looking for the moves.
Well, that's brilliant if Floyd can do something here at this late stage. America feeling they've got something of a monopoly after the win, perhaps, last year of Tyler Hamilton. Floyd Landis are now moving clear just a little bit. There's Axel Merckx, also moved up towards the front now. These boys, though, just still in the peloton and moving very, very quickly. A lot of concerned faces if you look in the pack here.
Eric Decker, but this is the back end of the group, and it's still a very large group, this main field. Decker in very good form as we move slowly up the group here to see just in fact who has made contact. I feel absolutely certain at the front end of the group Michael Bogard has recovered from his incident, as Axel doesn't really seem to be enjoying this Liège-Bastogne-Liège this afternoon. Gianni Farazin just going through at the back end of the group. That was Unai Echevarria trying to stay just on the tail end. Now this attack has actually proved to be quite successful for these two riders. Landeluz there in the orange jersey will not get any help at all here from Sinkovic, and that will really start to annoy him, because there's nothing worse than having a rider sitting on your tail like a limpet. But this will be team orders for Quick-Step Davitamon.
Landeluz, pro about 4 years, never won a bike race, but he started, we've noticed him this year, started to do a lot of good riding at the front. And here we go, 14 kilometres to go, and he's got Sinkovic to help him out at last. So that will take on a significantly different attempt. The peloton working hard, trying to work it out, and Paolo Bettini appears to have dropped from the front just for the moment. No, I beg your pardon, there he is, off the front.
Well, it's a Professor Bortolo rider who's trying to pull this race back together. There's an awful lot of confusion here going on. A lot of riders trying to find a break to get off the front as they charge down onto the banks of the Meuse. They've got a very fast descent away from here in a few moments' time, when they'll see speeds approaching 80 or 90 kilometers an hour. They'll go past the Liège football stadium along a short stretch of flat road before they get to the bottom of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas.
Sinkovic now deciding it's okay to work. Perhaps somebody's told him in his earpiece. As we're heading down towards the city of Liège, we should get a sight of the famous football ground, Standard Liège, as we head across the river and up the finishing climb. But we're now looking here at the man who started the move, Landeluz, well read by Sinkovic, still ahead of the field, causing quite a diversion, if you like, to the chase behind, because they're preoccupied now. And you never know. This is the psychological moment of Liège-Bastogne-Liège these days, as we head towards the climb of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, which is where the strong men will try to get away and then concentrate on catching the two leaders, because on this long straight main road, that is a very nice lead they've got just now.
Around about 15 seconds. Sinkovic won't be riding too hard, but what he's trying to do is pull a little bit more energy out of the man in second position here, Landeluz. He'll help him just a fraction on these flatter parts of the course, and you see that twitch in the arm there. He's done his turn, he's given him a little bit of a breather, and now he's saying, well, you're the man on the attack, you carry on and see, let's see what you've got, let's see if we can survive to the foot of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. The main field, though, is stretched out into a very long line here, probably touching speeds right now of around about 80 kilometers an hour. The gap is just 17 seconds.
He's 23 years of age, Sinkovic. Very promising young rider, well spotted by Patrick Lefevre. He's German. and he's won one small race in Winterthur in Switzerland a few years ago now. But he's very young and he's got a long career ahead of him. Chance now to sense what it might be like to lead one home in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, because when he goes through, he really does stretch poor old Landeluz. He has such a hard time getting onto his wheel, and then as soon as he gets on, it's time to go to the front again, so he's not recovering that well.
They've still got a couple of kilometres change at the front of the main field. Now, this is quite strange to see a team like Lotto Domo doing the acceleration on the front, and in fourth position there is Peter van Pietergem. Now, Peter van Pietergem, in fact, if he's in a good day and he's got great condition, has got the ability to get over this climb of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, because it's very resemblant of the climbs in the Flanders that he excels on, climbs like the Mur de Grammont or even the Côte de Bosberg. They won't be cobble climbs, as he would have wished a couple of weeks ago when he was riding the Tour of Flanders to try and win it. But certainly it would be a fine performance by Peter van Pietergem if he could get himself a victory here in Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
The only thing against him really is that the uphill finishes won't be maybe as strong as somebody like Rebellin or Bogart, but we'll see, because it depends how tired they are after racing 258 kilometres.
And it depends how tactical it gets on the running towards the finish. If one lone leader is able to steal an advantage, then it's going to be quite difficult, and he won't have too many of his teammates left after a big effort like this to try and pace him back into the event. There you can see very attentive in the first 10 there, right in the middle of that arrowhead, the red, white and red jersey of the champion of Italy, Paolo Bettini, looking very comfortable. He knows the climb that's coming up, and he knows that 13 seconds is absolutely nothing. You can wipe 13 seconds away in the first 200 meters of the climb they're going to start in a couple of kilometers time.
Well, well, you always know when you're entering the city of Liège when you come down the autoroutes here on stilts. As we race into town now, there's the famous river again that we see so often, the Mars. And here are the two leaders that bring us home towards Liège. But these days we go out of Liège again over to the suburbs, and unfortunately for the riders, a couple of climbs take them to the line. But they've got a good climber in Landeluz, not too sure about Sienkiewicz. But Sienkiewicz seems at the moment to be the strongest or stronger of the two riders as we head down past the football club.
Well, they're over the Meuse, and that group again over the Côte de Sartimont is certainly reduced in numbers. And it's good to see that the youngster Sienkiewicz has decided to work a little bit at the front here. It takes a bit of pressure off the Spanish rider Landeluz, but I think he'll be just holding back some of his forces, because he knows his orders of the day are to look after one man, and that one man is Paolo Bettini, who's won this race on 2 previous occasions. You can see a line of Fassa Bortolo riders in the blue and white jerseys. They'll be trying to pace Frank van der Broek into a nice position to start this climb. Van der Broek claims that he hasn't got the explosive accelerations necessary to win the race as he did a couple of years ago, but when you see a rider being very attentive like this at the end of a race, it means that he has got good form and he has the ability still to get himself into the position to possibly launch an attack.
But the peloton is still so big, and we're not seeing a concerted pattern of one team example taking up the chase. We've got Seiko on the front at the moment, I suspect now for Medico Celestino, because the team leader didn't start this morning, Danilo De Luca. He's got cystitis and a fever, so unable to ride. And now it looks as though they're going to rely on Celestino, who very often does pull out a good result. And only 2 of them here. And one would expect Rabobank are queuing up, Fassa Bortolo are queuing up. I've seen Phonak there as well. It's a very strange race again for the Classics this year.
Nobody really putting complete control on the front end of the peloton as we quickly go forward to the 2 leaders. And Landeluz now at the tête de la course, la cabeza de la carrera, the front end of the race, is leading around the outskirts of this little town known as Little Italy, because of the number of Italian expatriate workers who've moved here over the years. And I'm sure once we get just a little bit closer to the start of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, we will see a lot of the Italian flags. That's a Belgian flag just there on the left-hand side.
So there was an Italian flag just on the corner. I'll give you that one.
Oh, thanks a lot.
It was there.
I was looking for it. I've been looking. But you will see that once we turn right up the climb of Saint-Nicolas, there are so many Italian flags will be out as we head through the little town of Tilleur, the foot of the climb. There's one there, Phil. Thanks a lot.
What a relief. But these 2 boys are going to be first onto the climb. Now we'll see just how strong Landeluz is. If he is a climber, he might try to get rid of Sienkiewicz here and go for it on his own. It's touch and go for the peloton. They're going to have to make a decision. Somebody with a big reputation, sooner or later has got to make his move, and they can't shadow box much longer. And Fassa Bortolo seemed to be the most confident.
Number 3, Frank van den Broek, and number 4 there, you can just see Peter van Petegem. He is riding this race in a very confident manner.
Isn't he?
He's riding the race like a man who knows he's going to get over this next climb and just hopes that he's in a group that will stay together and he can sprint out the finish. But there are still going to be quite a few more attacks before we get to the end.
We are only about 7 kilometres from the end now, as Fassa Bortolo are looking to see where Frankie is, and there he is. He's now second wheel. They're going to launch him into orbit. He's going to have to make it and take it himself very shortly, because there's not many men left to help him. It's a bit of a tight turn off that barrier. And in fact, Frank van den Broek lost a length there. There's the Italian flag, but not the case on the riding side today. Spain versus Germany right now in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Belgium would like to get in on the act.
Well, this is Luxembourg on the front. This is Kim Kirchen. Right in second position is Frank van den Broek. Paolo Bettini is certainly not very far away at all as we get another acceleration. It looks as if it's the Crédit Agricole rider again who was on the attack just a few moments ago, Kashekin.
Well, Kashekin, the Kazakh, the only Kazakh riding on the Crédit Agricole team, trying to take a tentative here. But where are the big, strong men who want to rip off the front of this race? Because they don't seem to be here right now. You get some idea, though, of the slopes of this climb from this shot. And you also get some idea that these two boys haven't got a lot of fuel left.
Ow, it really hurts. So you can see these riders, you can see at the foot of the climb here, 17%. It's only just over a kilometre in length. And as I said, that 10 or 12 second advantage can get completely wiped away. This man is doing a fabulous job on the front here for Quick-Step Davica Monsinkjevic, but in the back of his mind, he must know that his team leader is not very far behind. Now, this is an ideal situation. There's the main field, not very far away at all. If Paolo Bettini can get across to the tail of his teammate there, his teammate will open up the gas and try and cause a gap.
Well, there are still some 35 riders left in that pack. It looks as though Beltransit has gone backwards there as they slip away. Now, these are the two leaders. They still have a chance if they can get over the top. We are heading up to... Well,
I think
they have no chance. It's all over, and this is the steep part. There's got to come a counter-attack now, and this is it. Van Petegem brings them over the top. Takes a look over his shoulder. Looks like Bogart is second wheel. Then we've got Bettini, and that's probably Vinokourov who's tagging on.
Well, that's a great move by Peter van Petegem. The best way you can control this race is to ride it hard at his own pace. But Michael Bogart is the man really on form this year. Oh. He could be really putting the gap between himself and the peloton. He's tried this before on previous occasions and run out of gas before he's got to the top of the climb. The Lion of Flanders flags are out, but Michael Bogart, Phil, has finally got himself the gap.
And that looks like Rebellin trying to get on terms now as he moves up, trying to do the historic treble. But Bogart has been in this situation before in a classic this year, and he's totally misjudged it. He has gone now, though. He was, remember, second in the Amstel Gold and third last year in this event, and he's looking to go better this time around.
Well, look at this, though. This is the reaction coming from David Rebellin. Just on his wheel now is Alexander Vinokourov. This man is riding so confidently this year. He's already won the Amstel Gold Race and the Flèche Wallonne this week, and if he wins this one, it would be unbelievable. A hat-trick at this level of the sport is very, very rarely seen. He's made the junction. 3 leaders now on the front, Bogart, followed by Rebellin and Vinokourov, and on the defensive, Peter van Petegem. But it's still a chance it could all come back together.
Well, this is a big effort here by Bogart, and he's going to look over his shoulder and find that the two most feared men are coming right up to him here. Rebellin is just about hooked up. 5 kilometres to go now below the red top roofs here of Saint-Nicolas. We're in the streets of Anse. Vinokourov comes up. There's 3 very strong riders now in with the hunt here, and they're going to start looking at each other and deciding. Alexander Vinokourov, the master of the tactics. He just waits to pounce. He's like a bird of prey, this man. He just watches the moves and always seems in the right place when it's time for the kill.
He certainly is like a bird of prey at the moment. He's just hovering there at the back of the group, waiting to see just how this the breakaway is going to develop. This is the remnants of the group here. There is Paolo Bettini. He's been caught out by that acceleration. Another move here from Michael Bogart. If these 3 men want to survive, Phil, they actually need to become allies for the next 2 or 3 kilometres. Bogart on the front, looking for the win in a classic which he's been so close to in the last couple of years, probably smarting by the fact that he's been joined by the man who gave him a real good whacking last week in his own race, the Amstel.
Now, who is the rider there who's shot out from Euskadel Euskadi? Because that might change the face of things. We've still got one small uncharted climb before we run into the finish. It's the one that hurts the most. It's the one we never see on the contours as a noted mountain. We've been over the 10 climbs that specialise and characterise this race. These are the 3 riders who've done best. 4 kilometres to go. Vinokourov looks over his shoulder. So too does Bogart. Rebellin just gets on with the job. He's riding with confidence. A win today, be the first ever man to win Amstel, to win the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and to win the Flèche Wallonne in the same year.
Just saw Michael Bogart there on the telephone back to his team management, and I know you completely disagree with that. He doesn't need to talk to anybody right now. He doesn't need any advice at all. You've got to ride hard and get to the finish and then try and sort it out in the sprint. There are no tactics at 4 kilometres to go in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. When you're in a leading group of 3, you have to get to the final kilometre and then think about the tactical manoeuvring.
Well, Vinokourov's best finish in Liège is 10th. He did that in 2002. The other 2 know what it's like to get on the podium in 2nd and 3rd places. So he's got hot company, but then Alexander's always up to that. And he's riding very coolly indeed right now. Could well be the lead of his team in the Tour, the way things are going. Jan Ullrich not really showing us what he's going to do in the Tour just yet.
Oh, no, I've read all over the press that everybody's going to work for Jan Ullrich in the Tour de France.
Right.
They're not going to think about their own chances, but if Alexander Vinokourov has got the form of last year, it's going to be quite interesting. Bogart is looking so worried here. He wants information about the way the race is developing. I'll give him a piece of advice right now. Just put your head down onto the saddle and ride as hard as you can and get yourself to the final kilometre.
The race is right where he is, and that's where he should get on with it now. Forget behind at 3 kilometres to go. You can't worry about who's chasing. Best bet your life they all are. Can they get across, though, right now? This is the counter-attack trying to come, and this has got Sanchez in it.
Sammy Sanchez is looking for the victory in a big classic. He was well up there last year, finished 6th in this bike race. The 3 leaders, they are looking over their shoulders. The man who's the calmest here and the man who must be feeling quite serene about his position is the man in the blue jersey there of Gerolsteiner. David Rebellin is riding at the moment on a crest of a wave. He cannot do anything at all wrong. He finished 2nd in Paris-Nice at the start of the season, which was a good foundation for what has already been a very good classic season for him.
He's the little tilt up now. Bogart, I still think, has something in those legs. Surely he's learned a lesson this past week from the way Rebellin dealt with him in the Amstel Gold on the Cauberg. Here's the Côte d'Ance. 15% that they're on it right now. Steepest at the bottom. Gets a bit tougher towards the top when you make the turn into the finishing straight. Bogart is trying to control this race. He looks as though he's got an awful lot of strength left. This is the chase group, which in fact is coming up now. And the CSC rider there, Paul, looks as though it's Ivan Basso.
Well, he's a man I think they've been working for here this afternoon. He's just coming into fine form. He was a very good domestique for the team during the Paris-Nice race earlier in the season. And this is the impetus going out of this group, just trying to move across there. You could just see this is an acceleration from Alexander Vinokourov, merely immediately picked up by David Rebellin. But I wonder if Rebellin is going to be calm and collective and force the younger man, Michael Bogart, to make the effort to bridge the gap.
Shades of gap here, and how Alexander Vinokourov left 2 riders to fall off and fight it out in the Tour de France and win the stage, and he's gone again. He is such an opportunist, Alexander Vinokourov. He's won 36 races in his career, and this might be one of the biggest. He won the Amstel Gold in 2003. That was the year, of course, last year when he won that stage in the Tour de France in Gap. And he's made his play now, and Rebellin gambles yet again on somebody else making the effort.
I don't blame him right now. He knows that Michael Bogart is itching to try and win himself a big classic. A great move by Alexander Vinokourov. He was waiting for the tactical manoeuvring to be between those 2 riders, but Bogart has pulled back to the wheel now, and so too has David Rebellin. They're inside of a kilometre to go. Any one of these men could win, but Michael Bogart is the man who seems to have the nicest pedalling action. He really seems to be on form here this afternoon, but he's nervous and he's worried about the position of the other men coming up the road behind him.
It's going to be a real tough call. There's Sanchez, Basso and Bjorn Lukemans from MrBookmaker.com are in that group. And here he comes in the blue jersey, and this could be another good result for them.
This is Eric Decker as well, and he should, I say, be playing the defensive role, but he seemed to be immediately trying to chase up and bridge back to the men in front of him. Again, Alexander Vinokourov throws caution to the wind. He doesn't want to wait for the sprint. He wants to try and win this on his own, and look how Rebellin just sits at the back there. He is waiting for the moment to pounce when they make that left-hand turn at the top of the road.
Eric Decker's trying not to do anything here but merge with the three chasing riders. But, you know, it could be a seven-man sprint, this. He's very, very vigilant, Michael Bogart. He seems to feel he's got control. He probably keeps thinking of all the mistakes he's been making, and he's going to have another go. Vinokourov this time forces Rebellin to make the counter-offensive. But this is a big effort now by Bogart.
Good move by Bogart, but you see how attentive David Rebellin was in second position there. He's slowly pulling himself up to the wheel of Michael Bogart, who's really, you can see the movement in his shoulders now. He's really kicking hard. Rebellin looks a lot more comfortable as we look down the road. It's quite a long way back there. It gets foreshortened by the camera lens, and Vinokourov is in serious difficulty, not on the tail of the two men who dominated the last round of the World Cup. Bogart on the front and the calm and collected Rebellin in second.
And we're about to see a reenactment of what happened in the Amstel goal, because Rebellin will win this race now. Bogart again has not found how to beat David Rebellin. Here he comes now out of the slipstream of the big Dutchman. A piece of history in the making as Rebellin adds Amstel goal, flesh wool on, and now the 90th Liège-Bastogne-Liège. It's unbelievable. 3 out of 3 for him. He's the first man to do that. Bogart, he's second. He was third last year. Vinokourov gets third. Sanchez crosses the line in fourth place. Decker comes over in fifth. And that was a very tight finish for the rest of the field. Looking down there, I didn't see if Vesseman crossed the line, but indeed, what an unbelievable victory that was for David Rebellin. And Bogart seems unable to work out how to beat him.
Well, he was certainly not as calm and collected as David Rebellin was in that run-up towards the finish. One man I did see towards the front of that group there was Oscar Freire, so we could have a new leader in the World Cup at the end of this afternoon. But that was, again, a very good tactical victory by David Rebellin. He allowed Bogart to chase down the attack of Alexander Vinokourov. He waited calm and collectedly because he knew the Dutchman would have to respond, because he has forced the other man to do the majority of the pacemaking.
Well, this is the peloton fighting their way in for the places right now, but they're a long way down already. It's a big group again that was in at the kill. Over 50 riders, I would suspect, at the start of the final climb. Michael Bogart seemed to have tremendous strength today, but again, he was leading this man out far too early. And Rebellin is a man that could play a good game of poker. He never panics, he waits and waits, and then he stabs. And he was always going to win this race in that last 500 meters. You could see on the face of Alexander Vinokourov, he was in fact beaten at about 800 meters from the line. A little piece of history. David Rebellin now winning the last 3 classics, including, of course, the Flesh Wallon. The first man ever to do that. And how the season has turned for him, and indeed Gerolsteiner. With this victory, he'll be the new leader in the World Cup. There's the picture again, Paul. He came out of his slipstream. Already Bogart was tiring, just as he was on the Cowberg.
Exactly the same, a reenactment, I would think, of what happened just 7 days ago. But David Rebellin is a very cool tactician. Let's not forget he's been a professional for 14 years now.
So there's confirmation of the result. David Rebellin strikes history. Michael Bogart again second. Vinokourov, Sanchez, Decker complete the top 5. Matthias Kessler, got 6th place. And Tyler Hamilton, the winner last year, came home this time in 9th, with the sprinter Vicioso completing the top 10. But that 100 points for the victory today will also give David Rebellin the lead in the World Cup.
David, c'est fantastique ce que vous avez fait. Gagner l'Amstel,
It's absolutely fantastic what you've done. You've won the Amstel Gold Race, Flesh Wallon and Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
C'est vraiment incroyable.
It's
J'ai
absolutely
trouvé la
unbelievable.
condition meilleure.
I've found the best
Aujourd'hui, je suis
conditions
bien
today.
tous les
I
jours.
was the same as I have been for this whole week.
J'attendais le Saint-Nicolas.
I was just waiting for the climb of the Saint-Nicolas, and I knew that Bogart was going to try and attack.
Je suis resté dans le salon.
And so basically I raced very close to him.
j'ai pas la force pour attaquer parce que
I didn't have the strength to attack, but the other guys were very strong.
Après, dans le sprint,
But in the sprint,
c'est bien gagné.
I knew I could
C'est
win.
fantastique d'être le favori.
It's
Vous avez fait
absolutely
la course parfaite,
fantastic
vous avez
to be
mis
the
Strauss dans
favourite,
l'échappée, et puis vous êtes là
and then
dans
to
toutes
be
les
there
courses, vous étiez
right
là
at the
et
end,
vous terminez au sprint.
and then you win in the sprint.
Oui, c'est la course comme était comme j'ai voulu.
Yeah, that's the way the race ran out, and that's what I wanted.
Des échappées qu'il faut
I followed the breakaways,
la course. Et donc, tracé trop bien réussi.
and then
Et je suis super contente.
I'm very, very happy.
La Coupe du Monde, vous y pensez?
You thought about the World Cup?
C'est mon objectif.
Yeah, that's my objective, the World Cup.
So, as David Rebellin waves the crowd, fittingly on his own here, because that's the way it's been this last 8 days of cycling for him. He has been the true winner of 3 great races. Hope you're enjoying the coverage of the Spring Classics here with World Cycling Productions. And for the moment, for Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying so long for now.
Okay, audio is finished. These turns to the road are a bloody pain in the backside. So I'm going to do this climb and then I'm going to follow up descent, but I'm not going to do the entire route tonight. I've got a race in about 10 hours. Time to go new lap. Now, take a picture. Okay, so the ride is over. So for now, give me 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to coast. I'll let the bike close or end on its own. Okay, that's me finished. Okay, now we'll be back in a few hours to race in Madagascar again, I think.